Hi, this is Danny Doyle, and I'm here with another tier list. And this time it is for not a Fire Emblem game. I almost said Fire Emblem Tearing Saga, but it is just Tearing Saga. Tearing Saga, specifically Tearing Saga Champions of Yutona, but most people just refer to this entry as Tearing Saga. So I'm going to call it Tearing Saga, because hi, I'm most people. So, if you have not already watched my video on my personal tiering criteria, I would recommend that one. It will give a very in-depth perspective in terms of why I tier people the way that I do, because I think that it is important to make your criteria clear, because tier lists are very subjective, and no matter what criteria you end up with, like, it's not going to be set in stone. There's no one single objectively correct criteria. So I think it is important to, understand the criteria someone is approaching the list for. If you aren't interested in watching that video and just want to get the SparkNotes version of how I rank units, I try to rank on how much easier they make it to beat the game. Again, that is a very subjective measure, but I believe that all tier lists are subjective, even ones with very specific criteria. Now, just because I don't care about turn count doesn't mean that some of the attributes that make a unit good in fast play aren't also considered to be good by my criteria. For example, a unit with high movement can make it to objectives and accomplish them much more easily than a unit with low movement, especially if those objectives are time sensitive or if there are multiple in different locations on the map and you want them to be able to tackle both. Another aspect of my tiering that I feel is fairly uncommon amongst Fire Emblem tier lists is that I penalize units for their opportunity cost. In Tearing Saga, this mostly comes at the hands of the units in the choose 2 out of 5. So this gang right here, and then wherever Lionel is, he's hiding down here somewhere. But there are a couple of other units who their recruitment costs you something, and that will be factored in terms of, getting them and whatnot. Lastly, I do want to talk about availability. Now, normally I value availability pretty highly. It is mostly because, if you're around, you can actually contribute. And if you're not around, you can't contribute. And generally, I would say if you're trying to beat the game, contributing is better than not contributing. However, Tearing Saga availability is weird. For those who are not aware of the game structure, you have two lords, Renan and Holmes, and they go into sort of separate paths. And you split your army up, similar to Radiant Dawn, sending some people with Renan and some people with Holmes. This means that no one has perfect availability since no one can be available in every chapter. But even more so, it makes the chapters who join partway through specific splits feel weird because they are locked to specific routes. So if you looked on purely the number of chapters someone is available for, they are technically available on fewer than someone who joins before the splits. But I don't necessarily think that I'm going to count that against them, because while Arcus could be on all of Renan's chapters or all of Holmes' chapters, and as opposed to Shigen, who can only be in all of Holmes' chapters, Arcus can't be in both Renan and Holmes' chapters, so it ends up evening out. Instead, when I'm thinking about availability, I do sort of mix that in with opportunity cost, because several units want to go specifically in one route. For example, Mel and Roger want to go Holmes' route during Split 1 so that they can access Mel's secret event, which is the Ensorcel Staff, which is a very good secret event. I think if a unit desperately wants to go one route, that is something worth noting, not necessarily something worth penalizing them for, unless them going that route is incredibly inconvenient, but it is something that, I'll talk about when I bring up the units that need to go or want to go in a specific route, and it could factor into some of their rankings. It's very case dependent because the units in Tearing Saga are all very weird. And with that in mind, I do want to go over the tiers that I have. So S tier is perfect. I guess it should be perfect or nearly perfect. And these are the units who are they are perfect or they are nearly perfect. Maybe they have something wrong with them, but it is so small that you're not going to care. You're not going to care. There's not really any way that you could improve them that wouldn't feel like incredibly unnecessary and even worse for game balance. I think most of the units in S tier are probably an example of unbalanced, but unbalanced does not mean bad. I don't think that a SRPG, a Fire Emblem game, a Fire Emblem-like, needs to have balance in its cast. I think there's a place for very strong units. I think there's a place for very weak units. I think Tearing Saga sometimes goes overboard, but I think that it's fine to have units who are game-defining. A tier is great long-term. These are the units who are going to be significant contributors to your army for a large portion of the game. Now again, this means that, you get them, they're only going to be able to go in one army, so they're not going to be able to be in every chapter, but when they are around, whatever, army you've put them in, they're probably going to get deployed from the time they join to near the end, and they will be great contributors, and they will be there for a long time. If you show up late, you can't really be in long term because you can't be a long-term project. You can still be in great short term, either because you're great in the early game and then kind of not really necessary, or because you're great in the late game but you're just not around before then. So that's what B tier is. It's people who are great short term or good long term. So these are not necessarily as standout as the great long term people, but they are still people who you might use throughout the entire campaign, and they'll be pretty good. They're not going to be stellar, but they'll be pretty good. C tier is pretty okay. So these are noticeably worse units than good long term. But they're okay. They're not doing anything that makes them super special stand out, but you're not unhappy to deploy them. D is the bare minimum. This is probably the most damning tier, because people who are the bare minimum are usually just boring. This is someone who is kind of, sort of able to contribute. They do the bare minimum. They are someone you're never happy about using, but you will use them if you have to, either because an Iron Man setting or because it's early game and you're stuck with them because you don't have any other options. They're sort of just barely acceptable. And then F tier is memes. And arguably this is a better place to be than the bare minimum, because if you're a meme, people are going to be using you for meme value, right? I think that it is much better to be one of the worst units, but a meme tier worst unit, than be someone who's just kind of alright, but nothing special about that. And part of the reason for this, for my thoughts on this, they are worse units, right? But tiering Saga is not a difficult game. It does have an obnoxious difficulty spike in the end game, but tackling that with good units versus bad units is not going to make a huge difference there, because the way in which that difficulty spike occurs, it really wants you to tackle those challenges with specific tools. So I think that as a result, your meme units still end up being usable throughout most of the game. So are the bare minimum, right? Everyone on this list, everyone in this cast is usable to a degree, but the meme units are very, very fucking disappointing. The meme units are very disappointing. Alright, so we can start out with Renan. Renan is one of the main lords of Tiering Saga. Believe it or not, he is the one restricted to Renan route. I know, that's wild, right? He is mediocre combat. I should go over that, in Tiering Saga, units don't really have functional growth rates. They got fine growth rates. He's got 60% HP, 30% strength, 25% defense, 30% speed, 30% skill, 30% luck, 15 magic, and 40% mastery, right? The biggest one that is of importance is mastery, because that is your weapon level, but he has a base 5 mastery, so you can use most things that you really care about after only 1 or 2 procs, and he has the rapier as well as his PRF. The big thing that defines units in Tiering Saga is their skills. He has Urbanite at base, which just gives him extra move and better combat on city maps. Slightly better, it's 10 hit and avoid, and 1 point of move. The big thing is the move. That's why I refer to them as the movement skills. But at level 7, he'll get Adept, and at level 15, he'll get Draco, and these are the two that are most relevant for him. He does also get Adept on promotion for free, so if you aren't inclined to grind him to 7, or just haven't reached 7 for whatever reason by the time the story promo rolls around, which is near the end of the game, so it's unlikely that'll ever come up, but it is technically a thing that he can do. It's just get Adept on promotion. He also gets Charisma on promotion. Charisma is +3 to hit and avoid for allies within 3 tiles, so it's a lot less impactful than the 10 or the damage-based ones that you'll see sometimes in Fire Emblem, but it is still nice. Every little bit helps, and he's probably going to be around people anyway, just because he needs to get escorted to the throne, because his combat is not good enough on its own. technically he can also reach Nihil if he gets to 35. He's never getting to 35. One, he needs an occult scroll for that, and there's better candidates for occult scrolls. And two, like, he's never reaching 35. Most units in Tearing Saga don't even approach capping. The high-level skills are fucking memes. You can theoretically grind with many units. Runan is one of the few units who you literally can never grind with because he's locked to Runan route, and Runan route is the route that you don't have access to infinite grinding. Like, you can grind on, there are a few maps that I would consider to be grind maps, and you can grind on them. And I guess you could infinitely arena grind with him, but you can't do, if you wanted to grind a unit to an absurdly high level to get their skills, you would send them Holmes route because Holmes plays Gaiden and therefore gets to do like random monster battles. Overall, I think Vernon is pretty okay. The Rapier is nice for dealing with armors and horses early on, but his low strength means that his combat's not going to be great even with it. Yeah, I think pretty okay is probably a good place for him. Arcus. Oh my goodness, Arcus. I used Arcus long term in my first playthrough. I also quit my first playthrough in the endgame, and these are not related facts to each other. However, I'm choosing to blame Arcus anyway because he's incredibly fucking disappointing. So Arcus starts as a level 2 Cavalier. He's the green Christmas Cavalier of the two. And while his growths are like worse than Runan's across the board, it's not by so much that it really matters. Like, there's not really growth units in this game, as I constantly say. However, his bases are worse enough that it does matter. And most notably, the most notable of those bases is 3 Mastery. Mastery is weapon level. It determines what weapons you are allowed to use. And in Arcus's case, he cannot use the Iron Lance, and he cannot use the Javelin. He can use Iron Sword, he can use Slim Lance, he can use Slim Sword. I believe those are the only relevant weapons he can use. And Slim Sword, calling Slim Sword relevant is like kind of meme tier. It's the worst weapon in the game. But it is one you like have available early and you might use with people who like have low mastery. Not being able to use Javelin really sucks. Now, he does have access to a support with a couple of people, actually. He has a support with Esther. He has support with Rena. He has a couple of supports. None of them make him worth using. None of them make him worth using at all. He's just so trash. He's just so trash. The biggest upside to Arcus is that on promotion, so Cavaliers will promote into different types of Paladin, and each type of Paladin has not only different promotion bonuses, but different traits associated with them. And on promotion, he promotes to Bronze Paladin. So Bronze Paladin gets the worst promotion bonuses, I would say, of the various promotion types. He does get 3 Mastery, but if you've grinded him 10 levels, even with his only 35% Mastery growth, he's probably gotten a couple of points of Mastery, and he can use weapons you care about him using now. Other than that, the promo bonuses are very disappointing. 2 strength, 2 skill, 1 speed, 2 defense, 3 HP. The big thing that you get from going Bronze Paladin is you can use lances indoors. And all of the endgame maps of Tearing Saga are indoors, so being able to use lances indoors is quite beneficial. It's very nice. Of course, the trade-off is that most of the time you want to use your Paladins on outdoor maps, right? Like, before the end game, there are a lot of outdoor maps for Renan route, and if you're going to be using a Paladin, you want to use them outdoors because if they dismount, they take dismount penalties, and like you're not taking full advantage of everything they have. Arcus does not gain a point of move on promotion. Bronze Paladin in general does not gain a point of move on promotion. So Arcus ends up performing worse on the maps that you care about being a Cavalier. And like, Indoor Lances is nice. It's actually a relatively rare trait. Basically, only 2 classes in the game can use Indoor Lances. Sentinel and Bronze Paladin. I think those are the only 2 classes in the game with an asterisk around 1 unit who gets to cheat the system. But other than that, Sentinel and Bronze Paladin's the only way you can use Indoor Lances, and Pilum is probably the best, or not the best weapon, like individual weapon, but Pilum being the unit that, the weapon that is most spammable, makes Indoor Lances an incredibly attractive option, but not attractive enough to justify you using Arcus. He's very bad. I would say bare minimum, only because he has combat during, like, Welt that is, I guess, technically something for him. Like, it's 3 mastery combat, so it's not very good. But that is something he can do. Like, he's functional, and he has perfect availability. Well, not perfect availability, actually. There's a secret event tied to him where he will, if you go to chapter 26B, so 26 has 2 variants, 26A, 26B. If you go to 26B, he fucking leaves your army and has to be re-recruited by his betrothed. It's... you're probably not going to that map anyway, because it's the worst version. The biggest temptation to going to that map is it does contain the only pair of boots that you can get in the game without going to, like, without grinding for it in the RNG chests, because there are RNG chests, because this is that kind of game. You're probably not going to it. He is basically perfect availability, alright? Like, he is basically perfect availability. Yeah, Arcus is pretty bad. I didn't even talk about his skills because they're not super relevant. The first skill he gets is level 16, and it's Lethality. And Lethality is not actually good in Tearing Saga. I mean, it's not good in Fire Emblem, but it's worse in Tearing Saga because Lethality can only proc if a crit would have killed anyway. So it is basically just a slight boost on the crit rate, but also it only works at run range if the enemy can counter. It's really bad. Like, it's not actively harmful, but it is very bad. It's basically worthless. And then he gets Adept at 25, which is so late, and Canto at 30. I guess it's worth noting, Cavaliers and other mounted units don't inherently have Canto. They have to get them through, like, scrolls, or through level up, or just have them as a personal skill. And you could spend your Canto scroll on him, but I'd rather spend it on a competent unit. Even though I did spend my first one on him in my first playthrough, because he got, like, a fucking baller level up, his first level up, and tricked me into thinking he was a good unit. He's not. He's the bare minimum. Christ is also not a particularly good unit. He is strictly better than Arcus in every way that matters. I mean, the big one, right? The biggest thing that matters regarding Christ is he has better mastery. He has a mastery of 5, but he also has 7 strength and 5 defense and 5 speed. Arcus having the 2 speed advantage doesn't, like, matter. They're both doubling and not doubling basically all the same enemies. Christ has everything going for him that Arcus does, and also everything going against him that Arcus does. He's just, like, better because he has Javelin at base, so his combat is slightly better than Arcus at base. He also promotes to Bronze Paladin, and he also doesn't ever get skills you care about. It's Vantage at 19, Luna at 25, and Nihil at 37. Imagine grinding Christ all the way to level 37, and the reward you get is fucking Nihil. Now granted, there are a couple of enemies with bosses with scary skills that you do care about Nihil for, but Christ is not going to be killing those bosses. No way in hell. I should mention that, like, he is a key component of the Latenna event, and the Latenna event is a very, very complicated way to recruit a unit who absolutely is not worth it. But one of the parts of the Latenna event is that he can end up leaving your army permanently, if you don't recruit Latenna's brother, but you also get Latenna. The Latenna event is a fucking mess, alright? You have to do a bunch of complicated steps and have him kill a optional late game boss. He has to land the finishing blow so that you can recruit Latenna, and she's part of an Aaron and Samson situation as well, so it's not even like you get a bonus unit, you just get a different unit. And then Latenna will temporarily leave, and Christ can temporarily leave, or not, Latenna will permanently leave, and Christ can permanently leave alongside her. You can prevent this by recruiting her brother, who's this absolute dog shit unit. But you probably shouldn't recruit him because, like, he's part of a more, like, distinct choice where you're choosing between units. So the Latenna event is not something I count in Christ's favor. If anything, it counts against him because it takes away from his, like, availability, in that if you do train him and have him be a long-term project, but also do the Latenna event and do it in such a way that he leaves you, I still think he's better than Arcus, mostly because you can always choose not to do the Latenna event. And you can choose to have him not leave. You can do some funny stuff too, where you kill him off in order to stop him from leaving, and then revive him in the revival like, there's a revival tower, right? There's weird stuff you can do with him around the Latena event. I think it mostly doesn't impact his ranking, to be honest. Oh, Garrow. Garrow, the game presents Garrow as if he is the Jagan in Chapter 1, and then it introduces you to the actual Jagan in Chapter 2. Garrow is a pirate. He actually has fairly decent combat stats, especially for Chapter 1. 35 HP, 11 strength. 4 skill is the biggest downside because he uses axes. So his accuracy, he's going to have accuracy problems the entire game because 25% skill growth, not enough to get him out of that hole. But 10 speed, 6 defense, 1 luck, 11 mastery, so he can use every axe you care about. 4 move. Yeah, Pirate is Armor Knight in disguise, except for it's not really, because Armor Knights have 3 move in this game. But Pirate is so low movement. That's lower movement than most infantry classes. It's really tragic. It's really tragic. He does have Adept and Seafarer at base, and Seafarer will give him extra movement on sea maps, which are plentiful on Holmes' route, so you can send him Holmes' route to sort of partway kind of mitigate his infantry movement issue. But his combat's still not phenomenal. Like, it doesn't hold up super long. I misspoke, by the way. 4 move is not less than normal infantry. 4 move is normal for a lot of infantry. So, yeah, he doesn't have worse movement than infantry, but he does have 3 less move than unpromoted cavaliers. And he is considered a promoted unit as well. So that is sort of the downside, is that many unpromoted units, many unpromoted infantry, right, they can promote to ditch their 4 move. But since Garrow is a promoted infantry, like, he keeps pace with your infantry for the time being, but then when they promote, they leave him behind. He does have skills that he can learn. He starts at level 7, so he is 21 levels away from Wrath. So he's Wrath at 28, right? So Flurry at 29, which is 28 levels away. Nihil at 30, and Lethality at 31, which requires an Occult Scroll. The Occult Scroll being an item that raises a unit's level cap. Level caps work weird in TRS. I won't go super depth into it, but there are a limited number of Occult Scrolls that can raise a unit's level cap, and some units need them for skills, in particular pre-promotes or other units who would have a cap of 30. Any pre-promote is capped at 30 until they get an Occult Scroll, and if there's any skills above 30, then they need an Occult Scroll for them. He needs an Occult Scroll for fucking Lethality, which, again, one of the worst skills in the game. It is not actively harmful, but it is barely helpful. Still, his combat's, like, again, pretty okay-ish. I still think he falls into the meme category. Like, perfect availability doesn't save this guy. He's never catching up. Map 1, he actually can cross the river, because map 1, there's like, you're waiting for a drawbridge to go down, and because he has water walking and 5 move, no, it's a plains map, so he still only has 4 move. But because he has water walking, he can cross the river sooner than your other units, because they have to wait for the drawbridge to go down. And as a result, he can actually reach combat before the Cavaliers, which is very funny. It's a 1-turn advantage in being able to get there, because then the drawbridge goes down and they just charge ahead. But then Chapter 2 is a very big map. Chapter 4 is a very big map. Even the indoor maps, like, he struggles because axes are not a very good weapon type in this game. They're just very inaccurate. You'd rather be a lance user than an axe user. And his base skill does not help with the accuracy problems. So yeah, I'm gonna leave Garrow in memes tier. He's definitely, I would say, at the top of memes because, like, he can do stuff in a playthrough, but I don't know that it necessarily even accomplishes the bare minimum. Even when you, like, do the route split and send him in Holmes' route so that he gets extra movement, and Holmes is more infantry heavy, so, like, he's going to be keeping pace with infantry. Like, you have other better infantry at that point, so, yeah, I think memes is probably where he belongs. Sasha is sort of a trainee. She's deceptive. She looks really trash. Let me read you this unit's base stats. So Sasha has 18 HP, 2 strength, 3 skill, 6 speed, which is her highest non-HP stat, 2 defense, 2 magic, 6 luck tied with her speed, 4 mastery, which better than Arcus, and 4 movement. And she's sword locked, and swords are probably the worst weapon type in the game. Asterix, we'll get to that. However, she has a secret event where she can promote to a Pegasus Knight, and she can do this from any level. In Chapter 6, you get access to the Pegasus Flute, which is a unique promotion item for her that gives her a Pegasus Knight promotion, gives her pretty decent stat gains. In particular, 6 magic and 4 speed are the big ones, and then obviously movement and flight. 3 move and flight is a very big gain as well. She also gains access to lances, so if you want to do combat with a physical weapon, lances are just the best physical weapon type in the game, bar none. So she can chuck javelins and pylons around. She needs to grow mastery to do that. But if you grow her mastery, she can also use the Levin Sword. Now, magic functions as resistance in this game, kind of. Half of your magic is resistance, right? So it's not as strong as Thracia, but it is still, the magic stat contributes to your resistance. And so in order to give Pegasus good resistance, they're given good magic. But this means they can make use of magical swords to an absurd degree. Specifically Levin swords, the only magical swords in the game. And so she becomes basically a flying mage. Yeah, I think flying mage is a good way to describe her. And the other Pegasus Knights as well. You can promote her from Pegasus Knight to Draco Knight. I would advise against it for 2 reasons. One, there's only 2 Draco Flutes in the game, and they are incredibly rare items. And 2, the Draco Knight promotion actually reduces her speed and magic. You lose 1 speed and 6 magic, so you can no longer do Levin Sword stuff. You do gain a little bit of, like, you gain 3 strength in exchange, and 2 mastery, which, you know, is nice, but if you grinded her, like, either as a Pegasus or a Princess, you've probably got a couple of mastery levels. And she only needs 4 points of mastery to use the Levin Sword, which with a 30% strength growth, like, she's gonna hit it eventually, or you can just give her the mastery potion that you get in Chapter 1, which will give her +3, and then she just needs 1 point, right? She has charisma at base, which is fine. I don't think it's worth deploying her on its own, but if you do want to use her as a Pegasus, you might want to train her while she's still a princess, because if she reaches level 8 as a princess, she gets Vantage, and if she reaches level 10 as a princess, she gets Paragon. And if she gets Paragon, she becomes better than your other flyer. Because while there are no growth units purely because of their growths, Paragon means you're doubling your EXP gain, and therefore you have more chances to roll those growths. It's also worth noting her speed is 50%, which is one of the highest growths for a non-HP stat in the game. Everything else is between 20 and 30, like, it's pretty mediocre. Defense 15, so even worse. But the 50% speed is super notable because most units don't have any growths that even approach that. And she has one, and she also can take advantage of it in Paragon and just become super, super fast. With Vantage, if you get Vantage, when you have more AS than the enemy, Vantage procs. So the fact that she has a super high speed growth means that she can do ridiculous Vantage stuff, and she can do adept stuff and just, you know, go nuts. I do think the fact that in order to get Paragon, she needs to train in Princess, which can be a little bit taxing. You know, the game's easy. The Welt arc in particular, which is where you'll be training her, is very easy, but it is still an annoyance. I think that holds her out of... If she just had Paragon no matter what, she would be, like, in perfect, nearly perfect. She might still be. She's definitely worse than Martel, but if she had Paragon without you putting the effort in, she would be better. And if you train her to get Paragon, she's better. I think she goes in perfect, nearly perfect. No, actually, I'm going to put her in great long term. And that's because she doesn't really have an end game. I think that, so when she is indoors, she's dismounted. And she basically loses the promotion bonuses she got going to Pegasus, and that results in losing a lot of magic. It makes her ability to use a Levin Sword significantly reduced. She doesn't get indoor lances either. So yeah, I do think that, you know, she is still semi-functional as, like, a knockoff mage, because she can use swords indoors, and so she can use the Levin Sword for 1-2 range combat. But between that, like, not having an endgame, and in order to really get the ball going, it's hard, because you don't need to train her in Princess. Like, she can use the flute at base, right? So she kind of just is a Pegasus Knight with the option of getting Paragon, and, like... Yeah, I think that this is where she belongs. I think she's an S tier unit. I think she's nearly perfect. I think that the lack of an endgame sucks, and I think the fact that you do have to work to get that Paragon sucks, but if she gets the Paragon, she ends up just being your best flyer, until you're forced indoors, of course, and then Wrath and Favoritism takes over. I think this is probably where she belongs, just because flyer good, as it turns out. Magical flyer good. Her base mastery is rough. I keep going back and forth. You do need to train her a little to get her mastery up, whether that's in Princess or as an underwhelming version of the Pegasus Knight, because she doesn't gain any mastery on promo. So yeah, I'm going to leave her here. Even if you give her the 1 mastery potion, she can't use Levin Sword until she gets a mastery level, so it makes it not attempting to give the mastery potion to someone else, right? I'm gonna put her here, great long term, probably the very top of it though. The amount that I've flip-flopped between her being an A and S tier should tell you this is a very good unit. Very, very good. Absolutely worth training as a princess, too. Like, Paragon really defines her kit. Arguably, the option to have Paragon makes her better than Martel. Arguably. I don't know. I go back and forth about it. As you can see with me putting her back and forth, but I go back and forth. We'll revisit her after we talk about her retainer, Kate. Kate is a Lady Knight, I believe is the base class called. It promotes into a Bow Knight. She is basically an unmounted Bow Knight, dismounted Bow Knight, who gets a horse on promotion. So she has 6 strength, 8 speed, 5 defense, and access to swords and bows. No horse, but she'll get a horse when she promotes. She has Adept and Urbanite at base. Adept is okay. It's just, chance to attack another time. And if you're using bows, you can, attack into someone safely. Shoot down flyers, I guess. Her combat's, passable. She just doesn't really have anything that makes her stand out as a unit. She gets Terra at 18. Terra is probably the best proc skill in the game. And she has Canto at 27, which is very late. She's never getting Canto without the Canto scroll. I gave her one in a playthrough where I used her. And she was fine. I don't think she's anything special. The fact that she's around starting in Chapter 1 means that if you do want to train a Lady Knight, training in Welt is very easy, because while the entire game is easy, Welt is the easiest portion of the game, by a lot. And you can also send her Holmes route if you didn't train her in Welt, and just have her, kill zombies or something, or have her kill zombies in Chapter 8. I think she's okay. The biggest thing that holds her back, she's fighting over Night Crests, and much like in Fire Emblem, Night Crests tend to be some of the more competed over promotion items, shall we say. There's quite a few units who really want them, and if she wants to be mounted and therefore functional as a long-term unit, she needs one, and she probably wants the first one. And there are a couple of other candidates for the first one who give you better returns on investment than her. I think as a result, she's probably going to end up in bare minimum as well. Does she end up in pretty okay? I mean, if Christ is in bare minimum, she is in bare minimum. But maybe this is an argument for Christ up to pretty okay. I don't really like Christ long term, but if you want another paladin, you can do worse. You can definitely do better, but you can do worse than just adding Christ to your team. Maybe I put her in bare minimum. Yeah, I think I put her in bare minimum. I think she's worse than Christ, just because she lacks a mount early on. She does sort of need to be trained. No lance access ever. Lances are a very good weapon type. Maybe Christ goes up to pretty okay, because he's the best possible bronze paladin, other than, well, we'll get to him, other than the best unit in the game. But being worse at being a bronze paladin than the best unit in the game is not a death sentence by any means. Now we get to the choose one of these scrubs people. So the way that this works is you have a choice at the onset of Chapter 2, after Chapter 1 but before Chapter 2 starts, where you are presented with 4 units you can choose between, and then you get one of them. Then Holmes will get to choose one of the 3 remaining units, or Lionel, who is not available in the first choice. And you get to keep that unit. And his choice is it's in between chapters 10, 11, 12. Because of the way that the map works, you can get it basically immediately after Chapter 10 is when it's available. Whether you've chosen to go to chapter 11 or go to the chapter 12, the map is weird, it's complicated. You get to choose right after chapter 10 which one of them you want second. Some of these units, their like quality varies depending on whether you choose them early or late. In fact, to such a degree that most tier lists end up tiering an early version of the unit and a late version of the unit. And if I had extra portraits available, I would do that, because I do think there is a very significant difference between, for example, early Lee, late Lee. Late Lee is a lot worse than early Lee, just because I think he's the most extreme one, but Naren suffers from this as well, and then Luca to a lesser degree. I don't think it makes a tier difference for him, but he does move within the tier that he ends up in. Ezekiel, not really. Ezekiel, it's bad no matter what. But yeah, I think that... Okay, after some consideration, I've decided to do this. Early Lee, late Lee. Early Ezekiel, late Ezekiel. Early Naren, late Naren. Early Luca, late Luca. This does mean that we get a little bit of Shadow Dragon peeking in. I'm not going to be tiering Shadow Dragon on this tier list. I've chosen people that I think mostly look like the people they're replacing. Augmentator is the biggest stretch, but, you know, it's someone who's blonde. Everyone else is at least in classes that resemble it, you know, like Bishop, Axe Fighter. Cavalier to Merc is not a great one, but there's not any Cavaliers that really look like Naren, so figure that's the best we can do. And then Tomas is Archer. So this is the split. This is the area that's going to be most impacted by the fact that I penalize for opportunity cost, because every single one of these units, if you pick them, you are missing something. You're missing quite a lot of somethings, right? Like if you pick early Lee, you miss early Naren, and early Naren has advantages that you end up missing out on if you pick early Lee. If you pick early Naren, you miss early Lee. If you pick the other two, you miss both earlies, and that kind of sucks. So yeah, this is them. That's my solution. It's not the most elegant thing, but I think it is. I think it's worth doing. So early Lee. Full disclosure, I think this is the best choice of the bunch. He does still get penalized for the fact that you missed some early Naren stuff. I think that is a fair thing to do. Like, if Naren gets penalized for missing Lee, Lee gets penalized for the missing Naren stuff, right? I still think he's quite good. I still think he's the best choice, and I'll go over why. So Lee is a pre-promoted sage with access to tomes and staves. He is the only magical unit in the game with access to both tomes and staves, and he's one of only 2 units in the game that has access to staves and combat. So that is a unique niche on his own. He also has 5 movement, so he's got a point of move over what you would expect for your infantry at that point. He will still lag behind your cavaliers, but not by as much as some other units would, so that's good. He has 13 magic and 11 speed and 12 mastery, so at that point in the game, his combat is kind of phenomenal, especially because he hits on resistance, which is generally lower than defense. His growths are virtually non-existent, 10% skill, 10% speed, 15% magic, but his bases are good enough to carry him for a decent chunk of the game, and when they end up not being good, you can just make him a physic bot. Staff bots are quite useful. You know, there's physic, there's save staff. Those are the 2 big ones. I guess also heal is something that you can do, and Hemern. So there, you can find uses for a staff bot. You can justify deploying someone based on just being a staff bot, and for Lee in particular. So I haven't really mentioned the route split that much when it comes to specific units. However, I think it is worth touching on for Lee, in that almost every staffer you get wants to go Holmes route for one reason or another, and as a result, Entei becomes the only staffer who really can be on Renan's route, other than Lee. Lee has no special events or skills that he learned through level up, which makes him like sort of bland, and in a game where the units are really defined by their skills, he can feel off like not great as a result of that. I guess he does technically have a special event. If he is required for one of Plum's special events that gets through the armor staff, and I think he gets credit for that because you do have to choose him early for that event. I think in particular, early Lee gets credit for that, because you have to choose him early for that. But 5-move mage with access to staves if his stats are not really good for where you want. I think his bases are good enough for most of the game. But if you find yourself just like not happy with his bases, his bulk's not great because, you know, mage moment. But if you find yourself like, use better combat than him, you can make him a staff bot. Worth noting, staves are equipped in this game, so if he uses a staff on his player phase action, unless you trade it off of him, he will have it equipped and he won't counter on enemy phase. But that can be an advantage because it means he's not weighed down and he becomes harder to hit and also basically impossible to double. I think he can't go anywhere other than great long term. I really, really like early Lee. The biggest disadvantage for early Lee is you don't get early Naren. And early Naren is very strong because Naren is a training project and you want to train him. And then you can make use of him early. Early Naren also can go on Runan route. Runan route tends to be better for Cavaliers, and Naren is a Cavalier. So by making Lee, like by doing early Lee, you're depriving Naren of the easier training arc, and you're also depriving him of being able to go Runan route. I think the first of these issues is exaggerated because Holmes route is, you know, it's got the optional grinding, and even if you don't use those grinding maps like I don't, you are still going to have quite a few maps that are mandatory grinding maps in Holmes route, and those are the perfect places to train him up. And even the non-grinding maps in Holmes route tend to be easy enough that you can train him up. So I think that part is exaggerated. I do think that not getting to send Naren Runan route is definitely a cost, but I think it's a minor cost, because you still want good units on Holmes route, and you've got plenty of good Cavaliers in Runan Split 1. And you can send Naren with Runan after Split 1, and it's fine. I think Holmes is, I think Lee is just a very, very good unit, and he gets credit for getting you in armor if you pick him early. Late Lee is a lot less impressive. I think that he's at the point where his stats are still workable, right? He can no longer be the second staffer on Runan route, so you lose that sort of like unique niche. He no longer gets you in armor. You lose out on an armor, which is a very strong personal staff, so he loses credit for that. And while he does still have good stats for the time, you have plenty of other units with incredibly good combat at that point in time, and so it's a lot less appealing. He does still have the ability to be both a mage and a staff bot. You have better staff bots, in particular on Holmes route. You have a lot of very good staff bots at that time. People are probably better at being staff bot than him, and you have a lot of good infantry combat at that time. People are probably better at doing infantry combat than him. Not necessarily because, 1-2 range, heat on res, good stats. It is still something. I think he drops down to like good short term, or good long term rather. The fact that he is sort of an opportunity cost for Lionel is held against him as well. It's weird holding the late ones as an opportunity cost because like late Lee could also be an opportunity cost against late Naren, but like if he picked early Naren, he's not, right? So I think the late ones, I'm only counting their opportunity cost against Lionel because you literally can't pick Lionel if you pick someone else late. I'm assuming that you picked the one you want early, one of the other four that you want in the early pick, right? And that one is Naren, by the way. It's almost always Naren. Like, I've done the other two, right? In meme runs. It's Naren, you want Naren. You definitely want Naren. But. This is good. Oh, Ezekiel. Is there any doubt in anyone's mind that Ezekiel goes in memes? Not only is he, like, just a mediocre axe fighter, but he's just, like, he's got nothing that defines him, right? Oh, I guess the thing that defines him, you want to listen to his skill list? He starts out with Lethality and Urbanite. At level 12, he learns Mountain Runner. At level 18, he learns Grass Runner. And at level 24, which requires him to promote or use an Occult Scroll, he learns Frontiersman. So he learns the movement skills, which movement skills are good, but, like, you're only using one of them in each map, right? You're using Mountaineer and Mountain maps, using Grass Runner and Plains maps, which, by the way, Grass Runner, probably the worst movement skill. There's very few Plains maps in the game. And then Frontiersman is one of the better ones, because it also has the secondary effect of preventing you from taking swamp damage. And it's nice to have. It's very nice to have. he's still not very good. Like, 8 strength, 7 speed, 7 defense, 8 mastery, stuck on axes, at least until he promotes. When he promotes, he becomes a sergeant. And so he can use indoor lances. He's one of very few units that can use indoor lances. But he's an infantry unit that you're choosing over better infantry or cavalry with better combat and better skills, or an archer with better skills and secret events tied to him. Ezekiel is a key portion of the Latenna event. If you pick Ezekiel, you can keep Latenna permanently. Ooh, big stocks. You do still have to hop through a bunch of all the other hoops for the Latenna event, and it's definitely not worth it, but you can. You can. I think he's still in meme tier. His combat's not actually awful if you pick him early, so maybe he ends up in bare minimum, but, like, he's worse combat than Gera, right? He's worse combat than Gera. He has a better, like, long term, because he ends up with 5 movement when you promote him, and also lances and indoor lances. I think that he still ends up in memes tier. And as a result, obviously, late Ezekiel is also in memes tier. These units probably won't be right next to each other. I do think there are options that are worse than early Ezekiel, but better than late Ezekiel. Because late Ezekiel is like, you still get that really bad combat, but you no longer have, like, any reason to care about an infantry with, like, only halfway decent combat, right? He's just not good. He's just not good. Naren, on the other hand, is very good. Naren is very good. Now, I tend to pick early Lee over early Naren. I think that is the best option, right? Because of an armor. I do think it is fair to penalize early Naren for missing an armor, for missing Lee on Renan route. I think those are fair penalties. However, what you are getting in exchange is the most cracked trainee in Fire Emblem history. So, his growths are nothing to write home about. 35% strength, 25% skill, 20% speed, 22 defense, yes, 22 defense, it's weird, 15 magic, 25 luck, 30 mastery, and 60% HP. Nothing all that special, right? His bases are fine enough for the time that he joins, or for, like, either route, but we're talking about early. They're fine for the time he joins. 6 strength, 5 speed, like, and then he's on a horse as well, and he has 5 masteries, so he can actually use weapons that the fucking Arcus can't. He's fine, combat-wise. The big thing, however, is, well, there's 2 things that make him, like, actually a strong trainee. The first is Paragon. I maintain that Paragon tends to be better than, like, Aptitude when it comes to boosting trainees, because even though his growths are just mediocre, right, like all units in this game, he has so many chances to roll those dice that he ends up, I wouldn't say he snowballs as hard as, like, someone with really, really good growths, but he ends up leveling quite well. Like, you could say snowballs, because he gets so many levels so fast. And that also allows him to hit promotion very fast. You can realistically promote him in Chapter 3. Get him all the levels he needs in Chapter 2, promote him in Chapter 3 with the Night Crest. Bada bing, bada boom, you got a Gold Paladin now. And Gold Paladin is the most cracked of the various Paladin types. Gold Paladin gets Adept Improvise on promo, which is good. Those are both good skills. But he also gets 8 HP, 6 strength, 7 skill, 7 speed, 5 defense, 4 mastery, and 1 movement. Some of those numbers sound like his fucking base stats. He gets more speed than his speed base. He gets more skill than double his skill base. He gets as much strength as his strength base. This man is crazy cracked. He has the most busted promotion in the game. By a long shot. He can also get lethality if you get him level 12, and Canto at 16. Canto's a big one, and 16's not that far away for a Paragon unit. Yeah, this guy's nuts. I know many people would like me to put him in S tier. I think I'm putting him here. Yeah, I think I'm putting him here. He is nuts. However, I think that losing access to early Lee, losing access to an armor, I hold those against him. To the point where I would almost put late Naren above him. Because here's the thing. Actually, okay. I think I am going to put late Naren above him. Under this logic. Okay. Hear me out, gamers. Hear me out. Because in a vacuum, right? In a vacuum, the same exact unit who joins in chapter 10 and chapter 11, or after chapter 10 as opposed to after chapter 1, misses 9 chapters of availability, and that should hurt. Especially when it's a trainee, because you want to train them up, and it's going to be easier to train them in the early chapters, like Welt, than it is in the late chapters. But Welt is incredibly easy, so you don't really need his combat. And early Holmes route is also quite easy. Even if you're not using grind maps, because I'm not accounting for grind maps in this. Even if you're not using grind maps, like, Naren doesn't take that much effort to train up in, like, the Atram map, the boat map, Holmes the Hero, the forced skirmishes. Like, any of those are good places to train him. I think that not losing an armor, not losing Lee on Renan's route. You do lose Naren on Renan's route, but I think that's fine, because you've got other, like, you've got Zeke at that point of the game, right? So you've got other people who can just break the game wide open and stomp all over it on Renan's route. Naren can be the person who breaks the game wide open and stomps all over it on Holmes' route. And so as a result, like, this is real weird, but I do think late Naren is a nearly perfect unit. He's probably going to be near the bottom of S tier. This is real. I feel really weird putting him late Naren above early Naren, because in a vacuum, they are just the same unit, but one shows up later. But you miss an armor, you miss Staffer on Renan's route, and yes, you miss another Paladin on Renan's route, but like, you've probably got Raffen on Renan's route, and you've probably got Zieg on Renan's route. Like, I think it'll be fine. You've definitely got Mince on Renan's route. I think it'll be fine. Renan's route split 1 is not so hard that you need 4 broken Paladins. 3 is good enough. Luca is not good enough. Early Luca is a meme. Does he end up in memes here? Probably. He does have a couple of things going for him, right? He does have a couple of things going for him. At level 15, he gets Flurry, which is probably the strongest activated skill in the game. And my take, probably the strongest skill in the game. It's either that or Paragon. Flurry allows you to initiate 5 rounds of combat if you have higher AS than the enemy. Which, he's an archer, so those rounds of combat are incredibly one-sided. The Flurry is usually like a trade-off, right? Like, you're initiating the rounds of combat, but they also get to counter you all 5 times. But with archers, or anyone who can attack at 2 range, so Pylum, Cavaliers, and stuff, right? It's not a trade-off, it's just 5 rounds of combat, basically for free. He gets Adept at 30, which you're never hitting, but it does combo well with Flurry. Like, Adept and Flurry work well together, because you have 5 chances to proc Adept, and you get even more attacks out of it. If you promote him, he gets Urbanite. It's a movement skill. I've been gassing him up real hard. Let me read you his stats. 19 HP, 4 strength, 8 speed, 2 defense, 6 mastery. He can use some bows, but not all the bows you want. It's incredibly tragic. He only has a 25% strength growth as well, which, like, is not abnormal. But it does hurt because his base sucks so much. The biggest thing that he has going for him is there's an event he can get with Raquel. And this applies to both early and late. So there's 2 events with Raquel. One of them is only early, and that gives him a wooden bow. If he visits Raquel before she's recruited in her village, he gets a wooden bow that has 50 kills on it, or 51 kills on it, and therefore has some inherent crit. It's not his personal. You can pass it off to someone better, such as his sister. But it is nice, and it increases their support as well. They get a support together. And being able to support about one of the better units in the game is a nice place to be. But your opportunity cost is that you're missing out on, like, one of these 2. I don't think it's worth it to miss out on one of these 2. Like, you miss out on a cracked combat unit, in armor, like, need I say, the ability to send Naren Renan's route. Like, even if you're missing an armor, like, it's not fine, but it's like, in exchange for sending him Renan's route. I can see the logic behind it, even though I disagree with it from an assessment standpoint. Like, I can see the logic. I don't see the logic behind, like, that crit wooden bow being worth missing an armor and missing Naren and missing Lee, and it's just, like, a mess. He has another event, and this applies to both his early and late appearance. And I think that, so this event allows Raquel to shed the pacifism skill. They have to both be deployed together in a specific map, and he dies as a result of it, but it allows her to shed the pacifism skill and become a unit who can kill people. Because Raquel, who we will talk about later, has mercy, so she can't ever kill non-monsters. And if you do Luca's event that gets him killed, she can for the last third of the game. Is it worth picking him for that alone? No, not really. I've done it before because I love Raquel as a unit. Arguably, you could argue that, like, for both of these guys, their late version is higher because, like, you can at least get an armor or whatever. But then, like, you're missing Naren. So I think their lates are lower. Like, I think Naren is a special case where, like, you still get Naren if you pick late Naren. I think that for late Luca and late Ezekiel, their late versions are just worse. I do think that, does late Luca end up higher than Ezekiel purely for the Raquel event? Like, is Ezekiel so bad that early Ezekiel is worse than getting Raquel starting in chapter 24? Or chapter 26? No, chapter 27, because it's 26 end event. No, I don't think so. It's a third of the game. It's less than a third of the game, because she's one route as well. Yeah, I think this is... I think it would be funny to put late Luca above early Ezekiel, but, like, his stats are not terrible. It's just that he has nothing special about him, other than Pilum, I guess, other than Pilum. Speaking of Pilum and indoor lances... Oh, Raffen. So Raffen is a Bronze Paladin, and he gaslights you into thinking Bronze Paladin is actually a good promotion. Raffen has an extra point of move over the other Bronze Paladins. He starts out with 8 move, which is very funny because, like, you would think, normally, Cavalier has 7 move, they promote, they get 8 move, right? But Bronze Paladin promotion doesn't give a point of move. Raffen just has a point of move as favoritism. He joins with 8 strength, 8 skill, 7 speed, 7 defense, 9 mastery, so he can use every fucking weapon you care about, and he's a Bronze Knight, or a Bronze Paladin, so he can use lances indoors. His growths are okay. He has Canto to begin with, so already at an advantage over your other Cavaliers, in addition to just having the extra move. And then he gets Vantage at 17 and Adept at 24. The real money, though, is that if you send him Renan route, he has a secret event that sends him into a Wyvern Knight. The promotion bonuses are just 2 HP, 2 strength, 2 speed, 2 defense. But if you're going to gain any stats, like HP, strength, speed, and defense are good ones to gain. Well, not so much HP, but speed, strength, defense, very good ones to gain. He also gains flight. Like, what's not to love? Oh, Wyverns can't use lances indoors? That's okay. Raffen gets to fucking cheat. Raffen can use lances indoors. Doesn't matter. Like, he carries the trait from Bronze Paladin over. It's so stupid. It's so stupid. He shows up in Chapter 2, with busted stats, and busted everything. This is the best unit in the game. Like, this is the best unit in the game. He's absurd. He's absurd. He gets the best of both worlds. He gets the benefits of Bronze Paladin at the time in the game when Bronze Paladin is actually useful, that being, like, in Welt, horse combat's actually quite nice. And then he gets to leave Bronze Paladin behind, and he doesn't have the downside of Bronze Paladin having less movement. Like, there's nothing I would want from this guy. Nothing reasonable, at least. Like, he's clearly the best unit in the game. The only drawback is the game is structured such that you can't send him on both Holmes route and Renan route. You do kind of have to send him Renan 1 in order to get the Wyvern promotion. It is worth noting, he can go Renan route, or he can go Holmes route. He can go Renan route. He always goes Renan route. But if you send him Holmes route, because he's not locked to Renan route, right? Even though he functionally is, you can send him Holmes route. Apparently, there is actually an event on Holmes route. I have no idea what the fuck it is. And everyone I've talked to doesn't know what it is. Multiple people have told me there is one, but they've never gone because, like, there's no reason to. Just, it is nothing you could give him would be better than the going Wyvern and also being a Paladin in the outdoor maps. Because Renan's route is where the outdoor units want to be, right? It's mostly outdoor maps. Nothing is really worth sending him Holmes route. But there is something that exists there. Esther. Okay, so Esther is also a Cavalier, and at a glance, she seems to be worse than the Christmas Cavaliers. She has 4s in basically every stat, except for the one where it matters. 3 Mastery is such a fucking crime. 4 Strength, 4 Speed, 4 Skill, 4 Defense, 3 Mastery. 4 Mastery would let her use Iron Lances and Javelins, but she's stuck at 3 down with Arcus, which is awful. Thankfully, she can promote, and she gets better stats on promotion if she gets there. She gets, because she turns Silver Paladin, right? So she gets 3 HP, 3 Strength, 4 Skill, 4 Speed, 3 Defense, 3 Mastery. Already better promotion than Bronze Paladin. But she also gets an extra point of move. Now, she cannot use Lances while dismounted, which is a little bit disappointing. But she has a support with Raffen. And that's pretty awesome. It's an 8 support with Raffen, right? If you're supporting the best unit in the game, you can support bot the best unit in the game, then you're at an advantage over the other Cavaliers. I do think that training her, both for the better promotion and for just, if you're dragging a Cavalier along anyway, you might as well drag the one that boosts the best unit in your army. It's worth doing. I think that as a result, she ends up being probably better than Kreis. Not by a tier amount. She's probably better than Renan. Just because, yeah, she's probably better than Renan. Renan's not anything special. Just because, like, the circumstances of dragging her around, making her that paladin, making her the support bot for Raffen, you could do worse. It is worth noting, she does get some skills that are pretty helpful. She has Wrath at level 14, which, when combined with the Raffen support, means that she can get a pretty decent crit rate, just between losing a bunch of HP. Wrath works basically like Engage, where your crit rate goes up as your HP goes down. It's not quite like Engage, but that's the closest mechanical comparison. So she can lose a significant amount of HP, and then between that and the crit bonus from the Raffen support, she can have a pretty decent crit rate. She gets Paragon at 20, which is tragic because it's like so late that the game's almost over, and now Paragon doesn't matter. Like, the late Paragon, getting Paragon as a skill late just feels so bad. Because it's like, wow, thanks, I can level faster. I leveled a bunch to get to this point. Why? It's just such an unsatisfying reward. I see people cite her Paragon as an upside. I think it's basically fucking non-existent. Like, it's level 20. She starts at level 2. It's so late. It comes so late that, like, yes, I guess it does technically make her, like, last 20 levels faster, and she can feasibly hit 40 as a result of that, if you're, like, hyper-focusing on her, but, like, she has that slow experience gain for the point in the game where she cares about growing. Once a unit is already good, like, I don't care about them getting a bunch of levels. They're already good. They're usually going to keep up just from regular leveling. And then she can get Vantage at 28, which I guess Paragon lets her get that sooner, but it is still, like, you couldn't have swapped those. It would make Paragon worse, but, like, I don't know. Paragon's not that much for her anyway. Entei is staff bot out of 10. She has sort of the niche of being the only staff bot who you definitely have who goes on Renan's road, and at least for split 1. And so, like, as a result, she gets credit for most of the healing over there. She has the mastery for Physic at base, which is nice. She's just sort of a staff bot. There's not too much special to say about her. I guess the big thing is that, like, most other staff bots have a attribute, usually a personal weapon, that has them stand out from the others, and she doesn't. Like, she's literally just a vanilla staff bot. Oh, I'm sorry. If you get her to level fucking 30, she gets summon. She's stuck on staff experience, though, so that's relevant. Like, she's a staff bot, I guess. I think I'd probably, just because, like, Lately is a staff bot who can use combat as well. Staff bots can never promote to use combat in this game. Like, they're just stuck on staffs. I think Lately isn't even on fucking Renan's route in split 1. So yeah, no, she's better than him. But she's still not anything special. Like, she's contributing in every map that she's in, most likely, but never in a way that feels awesome. Bart's, the local woodcutter. I really like this unit. I think he's mostly fine, though. So you get a lot of infantry units early on, right? And Cavaliers kind of dominate Welt. There's only one indoor map in Welt. So that's the only time that, like, infantry really has to shine. Infantry's combat is slightly better than Cavaliers, at least at base, but generally not by enough that you really deploy them over the high movement units, especially because so many of Welty's maps are, like, really, really weak combat and very big, or, you know, at least decently enough sized that the Cavaliers are at a significant advantage. Bart says Mountaineer, so, like, he'll have 6 movement. He has 5 move at base, and he gets 6 if you promote him. So he's already outpacing Garrow, right? And then he'll outpace him even more on promotion. He's stuck on axes, though, for the entire game, because he goes from fighter to warrior, unfortunately, and warriors don't get bows in this game. He is Mountaineer, though, so in mountain maps, which, like, his join map is a mountain map, and there are several mountain maps in Holmes route, he will have that extra movement. His bases are fine, like 9 strength, 10 speed. Stuck on axes sucks because, like, accuracy is a problem, but he can sort of cure that by getting Flurry at 15. Flurry is a little bit more dangerous on a unit who tends to use a one-range weapon, but Flurry tends to be, for me, the option with Flurry is I use effective weapons, right? So use the hammer, which has really fucking low hit, against artillerymen, and Flurry, just hope one of them hits. It can even work against Armor Knights if he's statted to, like if you check his bulk and he's gonna survive 5 hits from them. The Halberd against Cavaliers, same deal. Yeah, his combat's just, like, generically good, and you do want some good infantry. I think probably pretty okay. Yeah, I think pretty okay. I think Flurry pushes him out of the bare minimum, because it is a niche that he has. There's better infantry that you can train or not train, and still have them be better than him. Infantry are not useless in this game, but there are better infantry, and there's only so many infantry you want, because Holmes route is really the only one that wants infantry, and yeah, there's, like, very few indoor maps in Renan's route until the end game. Now, you do want some infantry for Renan in the end game, and he can be one of them if you train him on Holmes route. Like, I've used him in every playthrough. I really like this guy, but I think, if I'm being honest, he's only pretty okay. Julia is a Myrmidon who joins in Chapter 2. She's also faced with very similar problems to Bart's, in that she is an infantry, and she's like, okay if you train her, right? 4 strength is kind of abysmal, but she is adept at base, so she can, like, kind of make up for that. Her combat at base is definitely noticeably worse than Bart's. But if you do train her, she will end up, like, roughly equivalent to him. She gets better promotion bonuses, 3 strength, 2 speed, 1 defense. Swords are also a better weapon type than axes, just because they have, like, they're worse hit than lances for the most part, which sounds counterintuitive, but they are. But they have better hit than axes. Like, axes are just really tragic. You can also get the Armor Slayer, so it's not like axes have a monopoly on effective weapons. Julia gets Draco at 18, most sword units do, and Slayer at 25, and then she has a special event in Chapter 30 that gets her Astra. And those are all pretty good, like, they add to her kill power. The fact that she uses swords instead of axes sort of elevates her over Bart's, but his better stats sort of elevate him over her. At the end of the day, they're kind of just fighting over the same position. I think I like her less than him, but not by a lot. She might be a bare minimum, actually. She feels really bad to use, because at least Bart's is, like, there's not many people fighting over axes. Like, there are some, and there's definitely better people with better claims to axes than him. But Flurry is very good. Flurry, I think, is what elevates him out of bare minimum. I'll put Julia over Kate. No, Kate gets a horse, actually. I think this is a good spot for Julia. She is very usable. She is very usable, but so is everyone in this game, right? She's very usable, but so is everyone. Plum is incredibly usable, though. So Plum starts out as a staff bot. A worse staff bot than Entei, because she can't physic at base, but that's the only way that she's really worse, like, noticeably. Yes, less magic, yes, worse combat or whatever, or not combat, but, like, durability. But on the topic of durability, if you chose Lee early, she gets the Enarmor Staff. The Enarmor Staff is busted. You use it on a unit, and they will take half damage for the remainder of the map. So it is a permanent, what would you consider in Fire Emblem Pavise? Pavise in this game functions differently. It adds 20 your defense. But for her, it's like Fire Emblem Pavise. It just halves damage permanently. Or not permanently, but like permanently for the map. Until end of chapter. On whoever you use it on. It's 18 uses too. You cannot repair it with Smith's Hammer, but you can Hammer it. And you're gonna Hammer at a time that you can use an armor pretty frequently in the early game. Both because you get Hammer, like if you need to repair an armor, you'll get Hammer for it. But also because Plum has a secret event that causes her to become a dancer. This event involves sending her on Renan route, and then in chapter 10, having her leave the army through Kaga bullshit. And she comes back in chapter 14 on Holmes route as a dancer. She's a dancer who does like the Lara thing of having other important uses prior to that. But unlike Lara, it's not thief utility. It's staff botting and a personal staff that like you can arguably use instead of dancing sometimes. I think most of the time dancing is better. But there are situations where you might be like, you know what? Rather than a turn 1 dance, I'm going to Enarmor this unit, give them protection for this map. And I think that's awesome for her. It is worth noting that dancing in TRS is technically better than dancing in other Fire Emblems. There's some fucking RNG bullshit that keeps track of how many times you've danced. If you hit a certain amount, I think it's 100 dances, then there starts to become a 1% chance of getting an added effect with each dance, and the effect varies depending on which dance cycle you're on. Sometimes it's the Enarmor effect, sometimes it's the Ensorcel effect, and sometimes it's the Empower, the Strength effect. It doesn't fucking matter. You're dancing to dance. You're not dancing for the RNG bullshit stuff. I think she's better than Late Naren. I mean, she's a dancer. You could argue that between Dancer and Enarmor, she's better than Raffen. I think Raffen's better, personally, but you could make the argument, like, she's a very fucking good unit. She's a very fucking good unit. Martel is also a very fucking good unit. So Martel is early Pegasus Knight. She shows up 1 chapter before Sasha can promote. Technically like 1.5, because Sasha promotes partway through the next map. But everything that I said about Sasha basically applies to Martel in terms of being a flying mage with Levin Sword. The skills are what makes a difference. Martel does not have any way of getting the Paragon skill, which is unfortunate because it's very good. She does get Terra at level 15, which is a very good proc skill, and Adept at 25. She also has Vantage at base. I think that ultimately she's a little bit worse than Sasha. If you don't do the Paragon thing, Martel will be better than Sasha, right? But it is not that hard to get Sasha to level 10 before promoting her. And if you are willing to do that, she has Paragon and she's just a better version of Martel. I think they're incredibly close. I wouldn't blame anyone for putting Martel above Sasha, because she doesn't have the ability to use Levin Swords at base, but she is exactly 3 mastery away, so you give her a potion, and then she can. And that's awesome, because Levin Sword is what makes them into flying mages. She'll get it by naturally leveling anyway, but like, she's probably the best user of the first Mastery's potion. I can't really think of anyone else that uses it better than her. Like, maybe Plum if you want to start working Plum towards Physic, but like, you don't, because she's a dancer. Oh my god. Vega. So, Vega is an incredibly busted unit. Probably the best infantry unit in the game. You might think from his stats that he's just, like, fine. 6 strength, 13 speed. It's passable combat, but, like, it's worse than, for example, Bart's. A better weapon type. But also better weapon. He has a personal weapon that is the Shram, and the Shram permanently grants him the Enarmor effect when it's equipped. So he doesn't need to have the Enarmor staff on him, he just has it, but from having Shram equipped. Shram is also just incredibly high crit, which, you know, for a Swordmaster, very flavorful, and very useful for killing things, right? Yeah, he's very good. He's probably going to dominate your Holmes army. Not too much to say about him other than, like, his bases are good enough and his bulk is, like, he's really held up by his personal weapon, right? But his bulk is very significant because of the way his personal weapon works. Like, his defense happens, and then the remaining damage is split in half if he has Shram equipped. And Shram has 60 uses. Like, you can't Smith Hammer it, but you can earn it. I think it's very good for him. Like most sword units, he gets Draco. He gets it at 15 as well. Draco is basically a crit. So crits in Tearing Saga are FE4 crits in that it just doubles the attack, and Draco triples the attack instead. So it's like an overkill crit. I say overkill, but like you do sometimes kill specifically because of Draco. Yeah, he's very good. He's very good. He's definitely the best infantry in the game. I think this is where he goes. He's worse than Naren. Like, as a combat unit, Naren is just fucking busted. So he's worse than Naren, but... Or late Naren, right? You know, we're not penalizing late Naren for the inner armor. Yeah, okay, I think that's where we are. I think that's where we are. Raquel is, sort of a Jagan. I would consider her a Jagan. I know Chapter 4 is fairly late, but it's a 40-chapter game. So, you know, in the grand scheme of things, it's not that late. It's 40 chapters long with 10 forced skirmishes and a bunch of optional skirmishes as well. So it is 50 fights long, bare minimum. And as a result, Chapter 4 out of 50 sounds a lot more reasonable for Jagan. She is the we're going to set up kills Jagan. She has incredibly busted stats. Incredibly busted stats. 12 strength and 16 speed. Her offenses are amazing. Now, she is a sniper, so she's not going to be enemy phasing much, but like she will delete units like nobody's business because high crit, adept, urbanite, and forester, meaning she has more hit and crit on city maps and forest maps, and there's a lot of those early on. And then paragon, which is weird for a unit that starts like she's the basis unit, right? Paragon does mean that she ends up snowballing in the same way that Naren does, but she also has the unlisted mercy skill. Now, you can get this off of her by getting Luca in the route split and having him get killed off, and even late Luca does it. There is a misconception that you need early Luca. That's not the case. I've done it with late Luca, and that's awesome. Like, it's really great to let her actually kill people. However, I mean, it's not great that her brother dies, right? But like, as a unit, from a unit perspective, it's really great to let her kill people. However, I don't think that is worth the cost of just missing out on one of Naren and Lee and Lionel. Like, it's not worth it. It's not worth it at all. Even as a person who can't kill, she's still quite good. 16 mastery means she can use every bow you care about. I think there might be... Are there any bows she can't use, actually? I don't know. I don't think there are any bows she can't use. I might be wrong. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But I'm pretty sure she does not care about leveling mastery. 8 luck and a 55% luck growth means that she's probably going to be, like, in addition to adept and everything, she's going to be a crit machine, right? She gets Slayer at 16. It's not effective damage to monsters. It's just, like, plus 20 hit and avoid against, or plus 20 hit, avoid, and crit against monsters. But that's still useful because Mercy doesn't affect monsters, it only affects humans. Her leaving humans at 1 HP does suck, especially if she like procs adept and doubles and like it forces misses and consumes durability on her weapons, which is a little unfortunate because there are other good bow units in the game who would like appreciate using her strong weapons. But she's a very, she's very good at setting up kills for like Naren, for example. Bartz and Julia, if you're training them, she can set up kills for them. She's good at Sasha's training arc, like she does do the thing that Jagans do, where it's like, hey, I'll deal a bunch of damage so the shitter can get the kill. And I think she ends up in great short term or good long term. And the reason is that if you do the Luca event, for the last third of the game, she is a good combat unit. But at the opportunity cost, like she's a great combat unit for the last third of the game, but at the opportunity cost of like, what have you done? One thing that is worth noting is that the arena does not, like the arena ignores Mercy. So she can get a bunch of arena kills and get you a bunch of gold. Especially if you get her the Gladiator skill, because she misses out on Nihil if you get Gladiator, but Nihil's not very good. Nihil's not very good. So, yeah, I think potentially, I don't think I give her credit for the infinite or greener grinding, but potentially a fun strategy if you're willing to like sit there for a while. Mariuge is the first mage that you definitely get, and most of the mages are defined by their personal weapons, and he's no different. Mariuge has Wundergeist as his personal weapon, and this is basically Excalibur from the Arcanea games. It's just a high crit wind weapon. Mages also can only use 2 magic types when unpromoted, but then when they promote, they become sages and they can use all 4. They don't get staves on promotion, but they do get an extra point of move. So, again, outpacing Garrow. Poor guy. But yeah, he has, 6 magic and 7 speed. Like, he's fine. Shitty combat with Thunder and Wind Tomes. But he can use Graf Caliber, or Wundergeist, sorry. He can use Wundergeist to fish for crits and do fun stuff like that. At level 19, he gets Adept, but only if he's unpromoted. There's some weird stuff with the skills where like certain units will only get specific kills if they're unpromoted. He's Adept to 19 if he's unpromoted, and Soul at 20 if he's promoted. But like, he's a mage. Why the fuck does Soul matter? He's not doing combat like that he's taking hits, or he shouldn't be at least. And then he does get Flurry, and I've sung the praises of Flurry. It's a very, very good skill. It's level 39. You are not getting there. I'm sorry, you're fucking not. As a result, he ends up being the worst mage. Wundergeist is still, like, useful early on when you don't have any other options. He has a secret event on Holmes route that you probably want to go to, so he has to choose between a Holmes route event and a Renan's route event. They both just give items. They aren't even PRFs for him. One of them gives a growth boosting item that you can hold in someone's inventory to boost their growth rates. Magic, luck, HP, and skill, I believe, might be mastery. But it's only about 10% of each. And you can give it to, like, Naren or something, right? A Paragon unit. I don't think it's great. You can go Holmes route to get Syphlid. And Syphlid is a very powerful tome that prevents counter, and probably the best non-PRF tome in the game as a result of that. I think as a result you want to send him Holmes route. But if you care about the Codex, like, he gets a support out of it with Muriel, I believe, as well. I think he does the bare minimum, though. Like, probably here. Wundergeist is nice and all, but it is the worst of the various... Like, as you'll see with the other mage PRFs, you could do a lot better. Zeeg is incredibly fucking busted. Let me just read you this guy's stats, right? He has 31 HP, 13th strength, 11 skill, 12 speed, 10 defense, 8 magic, 8 luck, 11 mastery, 7 move, and because he's a Shadow Knight, most of the terrain doesn't actually give him any movement penalties, and the ones that do are significantly reduced. Like, he has better movement across desert tiles than infantry do. It's absurd. He also starts with Nihil Wrath Adept Paragon Frontiersman at base, and at level 14 he gets Canto. He can use lances while mounted or dismounted, so indoor pylons, hell yeah, and then he uses an axe if he's mounted. And that gives him access to the hammer and the halberd without the downside of being locked to axes, so he, like, I think that the option to use axes is good because you can use effective weapons, because, like, the lances don't have effective options, but the fact that you're not locked to them means you can use pylons, you can use, like, the Devil Lance because he has a unique ability that he can't, he's immune to the Devil Lance backfire. He also has 80% HP growth, 55% strength growth, 55% skill growth, 55% speed growth, and 35 defense, 35 magic, 35 luck, 35 mastery. 30 luck, 35 mastery. This unit is incredible. He's got Paragon and good growths, and good bases, and every skill you fucking could ever imagine or want. Seems too good to be true, right? I mean, it is. He's great short term. Use him. There is a misconception that you shouldn't use him. Kind of like a Jagan thing. I would say he's also kind of a Jagan, right? But the idea of like, oh, well, he falls off, so you don't use him, right? He falls off, so you don't use him, in terms of he goes away. Or it's because he shows up as a boss in one map, and so he shows up as a boss in 2 maps, but in one of them he has fixed stats. In the other one, he has the stats you grew him to. So it's the idea of like, oh, you make that map harder for yourself by training him. you have an incredibly powerful boss killer at that point in the game, and the Warp Staff. One round him no matter what. It's easy. Use him. He's incredibly good. He breaks the game wide open, and the downside of him leaving doesn't matter. Take his stuff off him before he leaves. He leaves at the end of Split 1. So after chapter 20, or after chapter 18, take his stuff off him, I think is what it is. 19 is the last map he's available in. So take it, or if you go Runan route, it's 19. If you go Holmes route, it's like 24 or something. Take his stuff off him before you do the Holmes Runan reunion. You'll know, based on the story, where it's going to be. They're like both going to the Hidden Village. Because he leaves with his stuff, and that kind of sucks. If you only have the Devil Lance on him, it's fine, because no one else really wants it. Use him, though. He's so good. He's part of the reason why I don't think early Naren is necessary, is like, he fills that role on Runan's route. I mean, you can send him Holmes route, but you should send him Runan's route, because that's where horses go. Only reason he's not a necessary unit is because, like, great short-term, he is a short-term unit, by definition. Norton VPN. Norton is an armor knight. The infantry units in this game all have, like, fairly decent combat going for them. And Norton has good skills, right? He has Wrath, which, like, for a tank, Wrath is good. 34 HP to make that Wrath work as well. 12 defense. He's very tanky. 8 strength. His speed of 4 means he's going to get doubled by stuff, and he's never doubling anything, but that's fine. He has Urbanite. It gives an extra move to make up for the move deficit that Armor Knights have. But Armor Knights have 3 fucking move in this game. Now, if you get him 6 levels and promote him, you can turn him into a Great Knight, and that's cool. And he get level 12 if he's a promoted, like, at level 12 promoted, he gets Provise, which is good, like, because he's supposed to tank. Great Knight gives him 6 movement, so he can keep pace, like, not quite with your Cavaliers, but he can keep pace with infantry, right? And you can give him Canto through a Canto Scroll, if you want. The combat bonuses that he gets from promoting aren't super impactful, but, like, going from 3 move to 6 move is a big deal. If you go to indoor maps, though, he's back down to 3 move. And you do have to train him and spend a Night Crest on him when you could spend a Night Crest on some of the other Cavaliers, such as Naren. I think he's probably a bare minimum unit. I think between Wrath and the fact that he can get out of 3-move hell, he's like bottom of bare minimum. You can train him in Welt and like do some stuff with him. 6 movement is more than promoted infantry after all. But then when you're indoors, he's just like... Also, worth noting, Armor Knights are sword locked in this game. So like no indoor pylums for you. Even as a Great Knight, he's sword locked. So that's pretty unfortunate. Like, it's really unfortunate. It's really unfortunate, actually. I would say it's better than being axe locked, but like, it arguably isn't because axes have 1-2 range. I do think the accuracy problem on axes are enough that I'd rather be a sword unit than an axe unit, but like, you're both just settling for not being a lance unit. Mel isn't a lance unit, she's a sword unit, but she's more importantly a staff unit. She's the game's only troubadour. She's also one of the few units in the game who has a movement growth. On her, I don't think it's relevant. You can, theoretically, use the save staff to rig her 3% movement growth, but why bother, right? Why bother? She already has 7 move. It's nice. She gets Canto at 14, which is pretty far away. You know, she's level 3, stuck on heal experience. She'll tend to get it pretty late unless you, like, grind her. But she can use swords. Like, she can't use magic, but she can use swords, so she can do combat if you care about that. She does that combat on 2 strength with 15% growth, so good luck if you care about that. But she can. I think the bigger thing about her is that she is a mounted healer with the mastery for physic at base, the ability to get a Canto eventually off of staff experience, and the ability through a secret event, if she goes Holmes route, to use the Ensorcel staff. Ensorcel grants someone +7 magic until the end of the map. That's amazing. That's amazing. Because remember, the magic is not just resistance, it is also offense. You can use that to boost your Pegasus Knights to make them even better mages. You can use that to boost a couple of your mages who have PRFs you want higher might on. It's just very, very good. It's very, very good. That combined with being the only mounted healer, I think definitely ends her in great long term. I think she's worse than early Naren and early Lee in the Pegasus Knights, but she's very good utility. She does have this weird trait where she is locked to the same split as Roger. You need to send them both in the same army. If you try to separate them, they just both depart to Renan. It's because they're engaged. Also, if one of them dies, the other one will leave the army. It's the Pent Louise thing, right? Much like with Pent Louise, the physical unit ends up being worse than the magical unit. But I still think Roger's quite usable. Before we get to him, we should talk about Tom. Tom is a meme. He's a better meme than Luca. I think Garrow probably is better than him. Tom is basically a bow armor. So Tom is the Ballistician class. The Ballistician class is weird. Like, they can use ballistas, although he's not going to get one for a while. So they're mostly bow armors. They have 3 movement, and they use bows. They have high defense. He has a base 14 defense, but he's got 10% defense growth. It's really weird. Like, he's statted like an Armor Knight, but his growths are not statted like an Armor Knight. He's pretty good in the arena because he's incredibly bulky, and you can see your arena matches, so you can avoid mages. So if you want to train him for memes, that would be the place to do it. His growths aren't great, so like he's not going to grow particularly well. He does, however, have access to the various ballistas, the 2 ballistas, Arrowspate and Stonehoist. Both of them are flyer effective. Unlike an FE11, Stonehoist is also flyer effective. So they are just ballistas of varying might and hit, but he can use them. The way that Ballisticians work, though, is they start out in, like, the ability to move 3 tiles. They look like tanks. As soon as you equip either of the ballistas instead of a bow, you become stationary and remain that way until the end of the map. 0 movement. Your stats change as well. It's like a reclass, similar to Raffen reclassing into Wyvern. You can then attack from that square with the incredibly long-range weapons, and that's pretty nice. But it ends up not really being worth the hassle, I have found. There's not really any situations where, like, normally having access to 310 range seems like it's incredibly strong, but Tom's stats are just, like, real mediocre. I think he's a better meme than, like, he's more usable meme than these. I think, actually, maybe the fact that you can do ballista stuff with him probably elevates him above Garrow. I'm sorry, lethality fans. Garrow's just not that good. I mentioned that Roger is worse than Mel, and I think that's true, but I still think he's good. So he's a Silver Paladin, which means that he'll have Pavise, or does he have Pavise as a class skill? I forget. He has Pavise at base regardless. He has pretty decent stats as well, and he has a support bonus with Mel, which I didn't mention with her because it's not super relevant for her, but because he's like a combat unit, him getting it from Mel is like good, right? He also gets it with Raquel, which is fine, whatever. Doesn't super matter. 10 strength, 11 speed, 8 defense, Vantage, Pavise, Urbanite, and then Wrath at 11. Like, he'll do decent combat. Your other Cavaliers will be, like, better than him, but he's still good short term. Or good long term, not short term. I think put him, like, here or here. I think he's better than Raquel and Late Lee. Probably better than Entei, honestly. It's hard to judge because, like, Entei does get that sort of exclusivity in terms of being the only staffer on Renan route. Like, she's not guaranteed to be the only staffer on Renan route, but she's the only one that doesn't cost you anything, and as a result, she's probably the only one, unless it's Lee. I think this is fine, though. So Katri is basically the Holmes route equivalent of Entei. She's locked to Holmes route. She's a staffer without a personal staff, and without, well, I say without any skills that matter, but she does have one skill that matters. She has the summon skill. It lets her use summon staffs. Summons in this game are green, which makes them significantly worse than in Sacred Stones, where they're blue and you can control them. They still sort of serve that meat shield angle, but they do end up being just not being able to control them in order to bait things really sucks in terms of just their viability. The bigger thing about her is she has access to the ability to turn into Neuron. Neuron is a fire dragon with pretty busted stats and also is literally invincible. She'll temporarily turn into Neuron. She loses the ability to use staves, but she can use breath attacks, including an AoE breath attack. And she's literally invincible while she's Neuron. You do need to be careful because the untransformation is RNG and happens at the start of enemy phase, which is annoying. There's a minimum number of turns. I don't know the exact math behind the way the RNG is, but you can usually use her to just completely clog points and delete enemies if you need to. And you should. Like, she doesn't gain experience off of this because Neuron is technically a different character than Katri. Like, within the game, they're listed as different characters. So she doesn't gain experience off of this, but it also doesn't matter. Use her to delete things or choke points. Like, if God gives you an invincible unit, use it. Now, you might think that this already easy game gets even easier with an invincible unit locked to one army. And that is true, but she's only around until Split 1. And that lack of availability is definitely a mark against her. I think that between being a staff bot and being literally invincible, she's sort of the definition of great short term, right? Like, she's like the Holmes exclusive version of Zeeg when you think about it. And Zeeg's pretty good. I think she's probably better as a result of that. Like, it's hard to beat literally invincible. He's got very good combat, but she's literally invincible. And if you don't need her combat, she can use fucking stabs. And he can't do that. So, checkmate, liberals. Alright, next up is Xeno, and Xeno is an incredibly middling sword infantry unit. Where have we heard this before? There's a lot of them in this game. He's got 6 strength and 9 speed and joins you in Chapter 8. So after you've had time to train up Julia or Vega or even one of your axe infantry like Bart's. It's fine stats for the time. Like, he can do stuff on the map where he joins. But he can also die on the map he joins. Like, it's not phenomenal stats for the time. He's sort of outclassed by Vega. And it's not that you can't use both, but, like, he's also outclassed by other people you've trained. He's outclassed by the fact that you want some mages. He's outclassed by the fact you want some cavaliers. Even on Holmes' route, I guess Seafarer, which does sort of tell you, like, hey, send me Holmes' route. There are boat maps there. Even the story tells you, like, Holmes is a pirate, there's going to be boats there. Send the Seafarer people with Holmes. There's even a cutscene where, like, Garrow's like, hey, I have Seafarer, I'm going with Holmes, please do that. Even though you can send him to Renan's route. At level 13 unpromoted, he gets lethality, and you know how I feel about that. And he gets Slayer at 20 and Draco at 30. Draco's very good, but it just comes too late. And the hero promotion, he's still sword locked as a hero. Hero promotion gains are, like, fine. But, you'd rather be a Swordmaster. I think he ends up in, like, probably bare minimum. I think Mariusz is more useful than him. Potentially Kate, since she can get out of horse hell. Or she can get a horse and get out of infantry hell. And probably Julia, because if you're training someone who's not Vega, like, 4 swords, Julia's better at it. Yeah, Julia's better at it. Genie is a thief. Thieves in this game are weird. So they have Lock Touch, or she has Lock Touch as a personal skill, or class skill. I don't remember which. Either way, she has Lock Touch. She also has Steal. Rather than being able to steal as a steal action, however, Steal is a proc skill. When you deal damage to the enemy, it's a speed % to steal an item from their inventory. And she has a very good speed base and growth. As a result, she can just sort of RNG her way into stealing you a bunch of shit. Which is very fun. You can also use it to steal equipped weapons. Again, it's RNG, but it's very fun. She gets Adept at 28 and Charisma at 35. Those are both, like, way too high level for someone with the abysmal combat of Junie to reach. Like, to be clear, her combat's not great. She has 18 HP and 1 strength. The speed is what, like, makes her... The speed and stealing and funny stuff is what makes her, like, a good meme. Because you can just be like, hey, I've got a 12 speed base and a 40% growth. Like, eventually I'm just gonna use this unit, steal a sword from an enemy, so now they're unarmed, and I can just spam them over and over and over again to get this experience. Again, because Junie starts at level 1, she's gonna level up faster, gets more speed, then is more able to steal items from enemies, and unequip them and functionally kill them that way. So in a way, she has lethality more than the people who learn lethality, because she has a percentage-based skill to functionally kill a unit by stealing their only weapon. Because there's no inventory training in this game also, between enemies at least. So yeah, Junie has lethality. That's the take. Now, obviously, all of this is very meme-worthy. The bigger thing is that she does have Flock Touch, and that means that she can open chests, and some of Holmes' route stuff has, like, open chest as a objective. As a result, in LTC, she's very useful because Holmes can, like, go one way to open chests, and she can go one way to open chests. In vanilla, I think that she's, like, probably bare minimum, maybe meme. I think she is good enough to be bare minimum just because, like, you can do some cheeky steal stuff, which, like, yes, the cheeky steal is a meme, but it is something you can do. And the fact that she has the thief utility to open chests is nice. I mean, Holmes opens those chests too, right? So it's really just turn saves. And as a result, I guess I'll put her at the top of memes. I love this unit. I use her every playthrough. I steal all sorts of shit with her. It's very fun. But she is a meme. Like, she's a meme tier unit. Muriel, despite having a name that starts with M, is not meme tier. She is arguably the best mage in the game. It's like either her or her cousin, who eventually becomes her husband. I forget if they get married, actually. Regardless, it's either her or her cousin. She's the only one with 2 PRFs. So she starts with Starlight, which is kind of like Aura. It deals effective damage to monsters, and it gives a bunch of avoid. It is light magic. She can use light and fire. It gives 30 avoid, and deals effective damage to monsters, and has very high might as well. 20 might, I believe it is. So that's busted on its own. But then she gets Aura Rain, which is an AoE spell. You can only cast it on turns multiplicative of 5 because Kaga game. But it hits literally the entire map and deals effective damage against monsters. And you can power this up with Ensorcel. So, like, even though it is only on turns that are multiplicative of 5, it's still so busted. Like, it's a global attack. And you can dance her and do it twice in the same turn. It's only 7 durability, right? So, like, you do only get 7 uses of it. But this effective damage against monsters, there's late game maps where everyone is a monster. A single cast of this can clear entire maps. Not to mention that, like, she could crit with it. Each individual one rolls for crits. It's so stupid. She's so good. Both of those are very, very good. I think she ends up... She's worse than Naren, obviously. I think she ends up here, though. I like her a lot. I like this unit a lot. Sharon, less so. She's later Kate, who you have to train less. Like, you still have to train her. Her stats are, like, better than Kate's at base. But if you've trained Kate, Kate will be better than Sharon. Don't really know where that puts her. Like, probably bare minimum. Probably lower than Kate. Probably lower than a couple of people. Like, maybe here? Maybe here? Yeah. She is... So she is a Lady Knight, right? And Lady Knight needs Nightcrest to promote, so you're probably not using multiple. I mean, you're probably not even using one, but you're probably not using multiple. She does have... The one upside she really has is she supports Raffen, which is non-negligible. She's also required to be alive for Raffen to become a Wyvern. But yeah, she supports Raffen if you get that conversation. It gets boosted up to a 10 support. But it starts at 5. She also supports Bilford, which is less big deal. And then she has Adept. She can get Flurry at 15, which I guess is an advantage over Kate. But I don't know. Kate, I think, is doing stuff maybe in Welt, kind of. Flurry is actually enough that I think she probably ends up here. Yeah, I think she probably ends up here. I don't necessarily know that I put her above Kate. I like this. I like this as the layout for them. Yeah. Bilford. Bilford is a meme. Bilford is also an Armor Knight. But instead of promoting to Great Knight, he promotes to General. And that's very tragic for him because General does not get 6 movement and a horse. General gets 4 movement. Better than 3, but it's still only 4. His combat is definitely like... So, I wouldn't even say necessarily better. He has Wrath and Pavise at base, which is nice. And he gets Nihil at 26, Adept at 32, Flurry at 38. So the only skills he has are Wrath and Pavice. However, Bilford has a 5% movement growth. And so if you are willing to meme around and use the save staff to rig his movement, or just roll the dice and 1 in 20 chance he grows movement every level, 5% is a lot when it comes to movement. He's still a meme. But I think his base combat is enough that he can be a better meme than Tom, I think. He can be a better meme than Tom. Ballista's nice, but like, movement growth though. I like Genie better. Thief Utility has its place. Steel has its place. I like her better. But Bilford is a meme. It's possible that Norton could go down into memes. I do think that being able to get 6 movement and almost keep up with the people you care about keeping up with is enough to push him out of it. Leone is an archer with access to Flurry. Wait, why is Leone next? Where's Mince? Does this list not have Mince? Mince should join... Why is he all the way over here? That's so weird. I guess it's because, like, you get everyone... Like, he technically doesn't join you until... But then why is Leone over here? This is so weird. I don't know. Let's talk about Mince first, because I like him better. So Mince is the first Black Paladin you get. And Black Paladins have Flurry as a class skill. And that's pretty cool, because Flurry is the best skill in the game. Now, he can only use it when he's mounted, but if he hits level 20, he gains it dismounted, which is nice. He also has Wrath as a personal skill, and that's pretty cool. 11 strength, 11 speed, 10 defense, 9 mastery, 8 movement, and respectable growth rates along the way. I really, really like Mince. I think that his combat is pretty comparable to Roger. Access to Flurry, though, pushes him over the edge, and makes him a unit who can do, like, decent paladin combat, or just delete an enemy. I'll often use him to, like, Armor Slayer a Ballistician, or attack a Ballistician who has transitioned from armored tank to just, like, regular tank, and delete them. Use Pilum to flurry someone over a wall, or just from 2 range away, and do stuff. I really like Mince. I think he's probably, like, the very bottom of great long-term. Maybe he's better than Mel. And Sorso's quite good, though. It's really hard judging these units against each other. He's definitely worse than Naren, even early Naren. Because Naren is just busted. But I do think he's the best non-Naren paladin that you get access to. Well, you do also get Raphael fairly soon after. I think he's great long-term is probably where he ends up. I think this is a good place for him. Leone, on the other hand, is an archer, but all is not lost, because she, much like Luca, has Flurry. And Flurry is very, very good. Flurry on an archer is very, very good, because you can cheat the system and just get 5 attacks. She also starts at level 3 and gets Paragon at level 9. This is a bit like the Esther situation, where it's like, well, why couldn't I just have Paragon when I'm low level? That's incredibly tragic, right? It's not as bad because, you know, level 3 to level 9 is only 6 levels. It's much earlier. She has time to level as a result of that. And as a result, she can get her late skills reasonably. Luna at 19 and Adept at 34. She also gets Urbanite on promotion to Sniper. Unfortunately, Archers are a 4-move class, which is worse than some infantry. But she gets +1 move on promotion, becomes a 5-move class, so that's something. 6 strength, 10 speed. So, like, she can flurry some people. I think she's probably bare minimum. Is she better than Kate? Kate is sort of, like, the one who I keep coming back to with these units that, like, have something going for them, but you're probably not using them. Whereas Kate doesn't have much going for her, but you're probably using her on a few maps. I think she's probably better than Kate. Because Flurry is quite good. Maybe Sharon's better than Kate as a result of that, actually. Kate's not doing much on Welt. Yeah, I think Sharon is better than Kate. I'm sorry, Kate. I love you. I really do. You're my favorite Lady Knight. But unfortunately, you're far from the best bow user in this game. Holmes isn't the best bow user in this game, but he's pretty damn close. I think he's... Well, is he better than Raquel, actually, because of the Mercy thing? He's worse than Raphael, and Raphael's a bow user, so we'll go with that. Holmes is the main Lord of Holmes route, would you guess? But he uses bows. So that's kind of cool. Bow Lord. Kaga did it first. Fuck off, Claude. So he has Lock Touch, which is the only reason that Junie doesn't get, like, a ton of credit for Thief utility. Still use her because she's awesome, but him having Lock Touch means he can open doors and chests on his own, which is quite nice. He has enough mastery to use the Brave Bow and the Longbow that he comes with. This is actually the origin of the Longbow being 1-2 range. His combat stats are okay as well, his bases, and his growths are fine. He also can grow to level 30, which is nice because he's a story promotion. So it's going to be a while before you promote him. His story promotion gives him access to swords, which is pretty cool, and charisma, which is, not as impactful, but still something. He's Seafarer, so extra movement on sea maps, and there's a lot of them in Holmes Route, so maybe you should send him Holmes Route. He also gets access to Draco at 16, which is usually the sword fighter thing, but don't worry, he'll get swords, so, you can use that there. And Adept at 32, so he doesn't get access to Adept. I guess you can spend an Occult Scroll on him. It's actually not unreasonable for him to hit 32. He does a lot of combat, in my experience. Yeah, bows are pretty good. His stats are pretty good. I like his Thief utility. I think he's good long-term. Is he better than Roger? Probably not. He's probably worse than Roger, but he's solidly a B-tier unit. I really like him. He's definitely better than Renan. Just being bow-locked for such a long portion of the game, his promotion is very late. His promotion is basically at the end of Arc 2, of Split 2. He can go, so it's Chapter 29, so he can do Chapter 30, and then he can do the Tower, and then he can do his Split 3 maps, but his Split 3 maps are usually warp skipped, so his promotion is very late, and I don't find I use it too much outside of, like, the Tower, which is whatever. Shigen is locked to Holmes Route. He is not a game over condition during Split 1, but he is a game over condition during Split 2 and 3. If he dies during Split 1, he will come back at the start of Split 2, and you'll get to recruit Sierra early. So we will talk about Sierra at the start of Split 2. I'm going to move her as well to here. Oh no, she's already in the right spot. Okay. Weird that they did this weird thing with Mints. I'm paranoid now. Shigen is, again, decent statted Myrmidon. He sort of competes with Vega for that role, or you can just use both. Infantry are pretty good in this game, after all. Even if you kill him off early, as I have before, not on purpose, like, by accident, he is still, like, killed him off early, I mean, like, not before the end of Split, like, within 1 or 2 chapters of him joining. He still has decent bases for most of the game, although a lot of his utility does come from his personal weapon. The Duraludon lets him play on Phoenix mode. It does consume 1 durability to self-revive, but it's absolutely worth it. Like, Phoenix mode is super strong. Phoenix mode in a game that has permadeath? That's so busted. As a result, like, his bulk is functionally infinite as long as the Duraludon exists. He does have 5 defense and 25 HP, which is not the greatest, but, like, again, Duraludon fixes that. And 14 speed means he's not getting doubled. 7 strength is also, like, fine. It's not great, but it's fine. He's 3 levels from promotion, too, which is good. He gets promotion bonuses. He has Seafarer and Adept at base, and then he can get Gladiator at level 21, which is the boost to Arena. Draco at 28. Oh, wow, he's a sword unit. And then Vantage at 38. So basically, he has Seafarer and Adept, and maybe in the end game, Draco. But Duraludon is very, very good. It's not Vega levels of busted, but probably here? He's quite good. So in order to recruit Sierra early, you do want to kill him off. And he will kill him off for real instead of self-revive, kill him off. And she'll rescue him, and then he'll come back at the end of Split 2. Or at the start of Split 2. But, he can still participate in every map in Split 1 until you kill him off in the last one. And, as a result, I don't think his, availability is affected by that. Yeah, I think this is a good place for him. Maybe here. Yeah, maybe here. So, Alicia is a level 3 mage with 7 magic and 7 speed, which is not great. Her growths in those areas are, fine, but her bases are not exceptional for the time that she joins. So she's held up by her PRF, which is Dire Thunder. As it turns out, Dire Thunder is a pretty good PRF. When you're hitting on resistance and doubling by default, like Brave doubling, it turns out it's pretty strong. I do think that she ends up being worse than Muriel, specifically because, her PRF is mostly just generically good combat, whereas Muriel has that really cool AoE stuff. And she joins later, but she is also on a different route, at least for Split 1, and, you want mages on both routes. Someone's got to kill high defense, low resistance enemies, right? So it might as well be her. I think her combat's still pretty good. Maybe here? Good long term? 4 movement kinda sucks. 4 into 5 kinda sucks. Obviously better than the armored to general pipeline. But yeah, I think this is a pretty good place for her. Maybe the top of pretty okay. I like her significantly more than everyone I currently have in here. I think the strength of Dire Thunder is what holds her up, but there are worse things to be held up by. I guess I should touch on her skills. She gets Flurry at 16, which is attainable, but not super fast, because she's a level 3 at base. And then Adept at 32, so she doesn't really have any skills other than Dire Thunder. If you can get Flurry on her, Flurry on a mage is fucking busted, and 16 is again, it's attainable. If you really focus on her experience, it's attainable. Samson, on the other hand, so he doesn't get Flurry. The easiest comparison, right, is to Bartz, the other potential X fighter. Samson doesn't get Flurry, but he does start with slightly better bases, you don't have to train him on Welt. And he has Frontiersman at base, Vantage at level 14, and Adept if you get him to 29. If you get him to 20 as a fighter, he gets Nihil, which is potentially relevant on him, because he has good enough combat that you might have him fight those scary high skill or high multiple skill enemies. But I think the big thing is just that you don't really have to do the Bart's training arc. On the other hand, the payoff you get I think is worse. He can get a Brave Axe through a personal event from a secret event, but it's not a personal weapon. You can just give it to Bart's. I think he ends up worse than Bart's. I think he's pretty okay. He's still extremely usable, but no Flurry is a little bit tragic. No Flurry is a little bit tragic. So next up is Lionel, and Lionel is the secret 5th choice of the 4 choices we went over earlier. He's only available in the 2nd choice, the Holmes choice, and he's got pretty okay combat. And when I say pretty okay combat, it's not actually. His stats are actually pretty comparable to Ezekiel, which is kind of funny. 8 strength, 11 speed, 5 defense, but 9 mastery. 9 mastery is quite good. He promotes into sergeant, and as a result gains the entire weapon triangle. But you really only want to use lances on him anyway, because Pilum and Door is the important part. The big thing about Lionel is he is one of the few units in the game with a movement growth, and it is a 5% one. But unlike Bilford, he doesn't start at 3 moves to make up for that. He's a 5 mover with a 5% movement growth. That's kind of nuts. It's a 1 in 20. You can rig his movement with the save staff if you want to. He also has Wrath at base and Urbanite, and he'll get Nihil at 17. And again, relevant on him much like it is on Samson, because he is potentially going to be combat competent enough to fight the high skill bosses that you care about in the late game. It's kind of depressing how close his bases are to Ezekiel for a unit who you cannot get in the early choice. He is late mandatory. That comparison is actually pretty damning. I want to read their stats side by side, because Ezekiel is widely considered to be the worst of the choices you can have. Ezekiel's base stats are 27 HP, 8 strength, 6 skill, 7 speed, 7 defense, 0 magic, 3 luck, 8 mastery, 4 move. Lionel has 26 HP, 8 strength, 6 skill, 11 speed, 5 defense, 3 luck, 0 magic, 9 mastery, 5 move. So Lionel does have the move advantage even before factoring in his movement growth, but his combat is very close to Ezekiel. And if you factor in Ezekiel's skills, Ezekiel often movement ties Lionel. Now, Lionel does have skills instead of having the skills for movement. Like, this is not me trying to say that Ezekiel is secretly better than Lionel and slept on. This is more just like that Lionel's combat is not spectacular. In fact, it's possibly just bare minimum. It's better than you, it's better than you, better than you. The movement growth is a fun meme. I don't know if I'm counting like save staff rigging movement growth to cap his movement, right? I don't think you do. I think he just ends up here. Oh, you know what though? The opportunity cost is late Naren. Oh, Lionel sucks if you count late Naren opportunity cost. Here. No, that's too harsh. Here. I mean, how much you penalize for missing something else, how much you penalize for the choice is obviously very subjective. I think this is a good place for him. Missing late Naren or missing early Lee is a big deal. Missing early Lee is why early Naren is worse than late Naren. So, like, missing Lee and Naren is a big fucking deal. For United's combat is just, like, only okay. Like, Nihil is kind of the niche here, and you can get it with Samson. Fuck it. You're lower than Arcus now. Norton's probably too far, but you're lower than Arcus now. 5% movement is definitely fun, though. Like, you can rig that, and you're reasonably going to get it without rigging it. I got 3 movement growths on my first playthrough without rigging it, so it is something that does happen, but not as often as you would like, unfortunately. And it's not enough to really fix him. Like, all the movement in the world for just, like, Ezekiel combat, not the best thing out there. Not the best thing out there. Ezekiel combat later. Like, he's late only, too. He's locked to late. That's so tragic. You shouldn't even be comparing him to Ezekiel. We're comparing to lead Ezekiel, who's the worst unit on the tier list right now. Fuck it. You're worse than the Armor Knight. Oh, the Mr. Movement has been outclassed by the guy with 3 move. What has society come to? Oh, Atrum's pretty bad, too. I love him. I train him every run. I love this little scrunkly. He's pretty bad. He is pretty bad. His stats and growths are comparable to Xeno. And he joins later. Only a few chapters later. Kind of only 1 chapter later. Because chapter 11 is optional. You can do 11 at any point, basically. So you can skip 11. I say 2 chapters later because you usually do 11. But if you don't want Samson or Alicia, like you skip 11. So he's pretty close to Xeno, actually, I would say. He's pretty close to Xeno in terms of he misses out on a couple of chapters and his bases are like, again, very, very fucking comparable. And Xeno's a unit who I didn't have a lot nice to say about, right? Xeno at least gets skills. Atrum gets Soul if you train him to level 15 prior to promoting him, and Lethality at 26. Other than that, he is just Xeno again. In fact, their bases are identical. Xeno has 1 less point of luck, and their bases are identical. And Xeno has slightly worse growths. God, Atrum is so depressing. I love this guy, but he's worse than Xeno. It's like a 5% difference in their growths, and Astrum's 2 levels higher, and has 1 point of luck to show for it. Are you worse than Arcus? Worse than Norton? No. He's here. The big thing about Atrum, and the reason that I do train him, is he recruits a couple of very important units. I don't give him credit for that, but it is nice to train him so that on those maps where you're deploying him, it's like easier to keep him safe. So it's nice. It's nice. Krishna is a meme. So this is, she has the steal skill, like Genie, but she lacks lock touch, because she's not a thief. She's a Myrmidon with the speed skill, with the steal skill, right? Her combat stats are comparable to Genie. She's really bad. Even before you take into account the fact that her special, like, utility special event thing is that she steals from you and leaves your army and needs to be re-recruited in the tower. She's real fucking bad. She's a Myrmidon with 3 strength. So 1 less strength than Julia, joins 12 chapters after Julia, 15% strength growth. Only skill that she has is steal. She gets Draco at 17 because she's a swordmaster. She's so bad. She's so bad. This unit is so bad. There is a notable glitch that you can use with her by killing her off and recruiting her and all this weird stuff. I don't fully understand it, but I also don't give her credit for this. I think she's actually worse than choosing the wrong choice in the route split. Let's not be hasty, actually. Depriving yourself of Naren is actually really bad. I'll put her here. She's worse than Garrow. I stand by that she's worse than Garrow, though. She just offers you nothing, but at least she doesn't actively debuff you. Marahan is a very funny meme, and I use him in most of my playthroughs. Or Marchen? I don't know how to pronounce it. I always call it Marahan, but it's not. It's Maerchen, so Marchen. He's 28 HP, 9 strength, 4 speed, 4 defense. So they're pretty shit stats, right? He's lock, touch, and steal. He's better stats than Junie. He'll proc steal less because he doesn't have the speed for it, but, you know, he gets some bulk. He has some actual strength. Maybe he ends up better than Junie as a result of that. He has Mug. Mug's a pretty cool skill. Whenever he gets a kill, he steals the entire inventory, guaranteed. That's awesome, right? It's Thracia capture with no downside. There is a downside, and it is hidden. Any unit within his range gets a negative charisma. Now, charisma's not that bad. It's only 3%. His negative charisma, it's 3 tiles long, right? It's a little bit stronger than the 3% you get from the positive charisma. 50% hit, avoid, and crit reduction if you are within 3 tiles of this motherfucker. People hate him. It's tied to the Mug skill, too, and you can get a scroll to teach people the Mug skill, which is so bad. It's actively making you not, like, it makes positioning a fucking nightmare. I use him because it's funny to steal unique items, and, like, you can steal unique items, but none of them are necessary. He's so fucking trash. He also has garbage growths. Like, he has 5% or 0% in everything. 5% strength, 5% skill, 5% speed, 0 defense, 0 magic, 5 luck, 0 mastery, so he's never using a mastery above 6 unless you give him a stat booster, and 10% HP. He is actively harming you in deploying him. It is very funny, and I use him all the time, but he's actively harming you to deploy him. Because of that, minus 50. If it were like a 10% debuff, you could work around it, right? Minus 50, you miss every fucking time. Lyria is quite good. Lyria is quite good. I know that was a very strong transition from you missing to Lyria being good, but trust me, Lyria is very good. Lyria has 2 unique attributes. So Sing is an RNG AoE heal dance. The more times you sing, the more likely it is to heal, the more likely it is to dance. That's still, like, generally on 5 to 10%. And the more likely it is to be more tiles. Like, it starts out only 1 tile long, and then it's 2 tiles long. It's not likely. It's literally the area of effect increases the more times you sing. She gets better at it. She's practicing at it. Which is similar to the plum thing. There's a lot of complex mechanics around Sing that I won't dive into because the video is going to be long enough anyway. But it is an RNG heal slash dance. It will heal for a little bit, like 5 HP. And it has a low percentage chance to dance anyone in the aura. which is not as good as a regular dance. Like, it has a better payoff, obviously, but I don't give her dancer credit for that. Like, it is nice, it elevates her a little bit, but you really shouldn't rely on it, especially not for, like, a necessary thing. But you can sometimes spam it and, like, treat it like a movement star in Thracia, in terms of, like, I mean, the 5%, 10% is like a movement star, right? Basically becomes a movement star. She can give people movement stars of, like, maybe I'll get an extra action, and that'll be nice, but if not, my plan doesn't rely on it. The bigger thing is she has access to Empower. Empower gives a massive strength boost. I believe it's plus 10 strength boost for the entire map. It's the third of the stat boosting ones. You know, we got Ensorcel, we got an Armor. So hers is Empower. Empower's quite good. Other than that, she's just staff bot out of 10, but like Empower as a personal staff, it's very nice, very nice. You need to send Genie with Holmes route. Genie is actually like necessary to go Holmes route for a lot of secret events. But I don't give her credit for that because it's not something she does on the battlefield. I think between Empower and Sing, she probably ends up in good long term. Probably like better than lately, definitely. Better than Entei, definitely. Probably here. This seems like a good spot for her. Because she's Entei plus, right? She's Entei with a PRF, and it's a good PRF. And then the Sing skill as well, I guess. Notably, like, she has worse bases, and by bases, I mean Mastery, the one that you care about. But she can chug a Mastery potion in order to use Physic, and then it's fine. Frau is the next Pegasus Knight. And she's sort of a trainee Pegasus Knight. She joins in Holmes route, fairly underleveled for the time, but very usable. And she's ready to go with one Mastery Potion for a Levin Sword. Or if you don't have a Mastery Potion, she just needs 3 Mastery levels in order to hit 8. And she's got a 35% Mastery growth, so, you know, it's going to happen fairly quickly. She's a level 1 Pegasus Knight, too, and so, like, enemies at that point in time will give enough experience that she'll pretty quickly be able to get to the point where she needs to be. She has Canto, which makes her easier to train. At 12, she gets Adept. At 25, she gets Slayer. Her bases are pretty fine, too, like 7 Strength, 11 Speed, 5 Defense. They're not phenomenal for that point in the game, but they're comparable to Martel, who joined a lot earlier, like it should be said. But Holmes route is easy. She's initially locked to Holmes route. She joins actually right before several grinding maps, like mandatory grinding maps, and you can use her there. I really like her. I think she probably ends up in, like, good long term. Probably here. Like, towards the bottom of good long... I mean, Flight is relatively unique. Maybe she's better than Lately. Lately's pretty underwhelming, TBH. It just feels bad. Like, half of what you got Lee for is he doesn't even get. San, on the other hand, is often talked about like a mini Naren. I think that's selling her a little bit short, or at least like oversimplifying things. She is the next Cavalier trainee, right? Like, she and Frau show up together and they're like, hey, we're both trainees, train us. And she starts with like pretty underwhelming bases. 6 Strength, 7 Speed, 4 Defense. However, she turns into a Black Paladin on promotion. Black Paladin promotion gains are very good. Like, I mentioned that Silver Paladin promotion gains were better stats than Bronze. Black is not as good as Gold, but it's better than Silver. 3 Strength, 4 HP, 4 Skill, 4 Speed, 4 Defense, 3 Mastery, and a point of movement, and Flurry. Only while mounted, but, you know, Flurry is still good. Flurry is still Flurry. She has Canto at base, which is very nice. And then she gets Paragon at level 5 to make the training project easier. Much like with other Paragons, it sucks that you have to level up for it, but she starts at level 2, she gets it at level 5, like, and she has a long way to go from level 5. I think it's mostly excusable. Like, it would be better if she had it at base, obviously. I'm not going to do the same thing with, like, Esper, where it's like, Esper doesn't have Paragon. No matter what you say, Esper doesn't have Paragon. She doesn't have it when it matters. Sen does. Sen does have it when it matters. She gets Luna at level 25 and Nihil at 40. Luna you can reasonably get, Nihil you can't. Like, she's not hitting 40. I love this unit. I hyper-invest in her every playthrough. She never hits 40. With grinding, she probably could, but, like, you know, that's with grinding. I think I like her better than Frau. Flurry is just very, very useful. I think she's still only great short term. She's around Roger's level. She has higher highs than Roger, but she does require that 0 to hero. But Paragon makes it pretty easy. Roger's around for more. And they're very close to each other. They're very close to each other. I think Roger being around more and her needing that little bit of grinding, even though it is like, you know, it's basically free because she's right before a grinding map and she gets Paragon in 3 levels. Some of those grinding maps are indoors though, which is rough for her because she's stuck on swords and she gets dismounting penalties. I think this is fine though. Oh god, Shiryu. So, this guy's such a fucking piece of shit. This guy's such a fucking piece of shit. I struggle to even put him in meme because like the meme is that he just doesn't have anything to offer. He is a bow knight. So he starts on a horse. He's level 5, or not bow knight, nomad. He starts on a horse. He has 8 strength, 8 skill, 9 speed, 5 defense, 0 magic, 3 luck, 24 HP. Like at this point in the game, those stats are not cutting it. But, you know, maybe you can make him a training project if you really like horse units. And he gets swords on promotion. He's level 5, so, you know, only 5 levels to get there. He has Grass Runner, which is like a skill that doesn't super matter. I haven't mentioned his mastery skill yet. He has 5 mastery, which sounds good, because I dogged on 3 as opposed to 4 for the Cavaliers, but bow mastery ranks are a lot higher than sword and lance ones. He cannot use an iron bow at base. This guy is what if Arcus had a worse weapon type and showed up significantly later in the game. He's fucking awful. He's so trash. I think he's worse than Luca. I think he's worse than the early versions of Luca and Ezekiel. He's so fucking trash. Like, this guy is such a fucking trash unit. Grass Runner is also the worst of the terrain movement skills. He does get Canto at 14, so, you know, that is nice for him. And Adapt at 28. Adept is 28. But this guy is so fucking trash. There is no reason to use him unless you're memeing around. And like, what is the meme there? What is the meme? I used a bad unit? Like, at least with fucking Bilford, you're like, I'm using a unit with the high movement growth, right? What is the meme with Shiryu? It's just, hey, this guy sucks ass. Raphael doesn't suck ass though. So Raphael shows up in the last chapter of Runan's army that Zieg is playable. I'm assuming Zieg goes Runan's army because it's just the best choice for him. He shows up in the last chapter of Renan's army before Zieg leaves. So if, you know, you sent Zieg Holmes' army for whatever reason, then it is still, like, functionally Raphael because he can join Holmes' army during the split. He kind of serves as the baton pass from Zieg. I like to think of Zieg and Raphael as, like, kind of a single unit, but they're not linked in the same way Ninian and Nils are. Their availability is linked, and the role they fill is linked. He starts at level 25 with endgame ready stats. 41 HP, 17 strength, 16 skill, 13 speed, 13 defense, 2 magic, 12 luck, 15 mastery. That's enough to use the Chukonu. Because he is a Royal Knight, which can use all 4 weapon types, swords, lance, axes, and bows. He has Wrath, Pavise, and Urbanite at base, and he'll get Flurry at level 32 and Slayer at 37. And 32 is late, but for him, that's 7 levels. That's actually feasible. If you want to use a Occult Scroll on him, there are worse candidates. Flurry is a very tempting proposition on a unit with combat that good. Like, Flurry's a very tempting proposition. He can use the Chukonu at base because of his mastery, which is awesome. It is unfortunate that when dismounted, he can only use swords. It does make him kind of worthless during the last stretch of the game where it's all indoor maps. But for Split 2 and half of Split 3, he's just like stomping the entire game. His growths are awful. 15% in everything. Doesn't matter, his bases are endgame ready. This guy is a beast. I think he is great short term. The short term is the second half of the game. I like him better than Zieg and Katri because while their short term is the first half of the game, first half is significantly easier than the second half. Like, the second half is where you get the sort of weird difficulty spike era of bosses, like Julius and Ernst and whatnot, and he's available for them, and he's often just the best solution to those problems. Sucks that he's not really good in, like, the last 3 chapters, but that's just paying the horse tax. Lionheart also pays the horse tax. He is the nomadic trooper, so the promoted version of Shiryu's class, but he's not shit. He's not as shit as Shiryu, at least. He has Soul Adept, Kanto, and Grass Runner at base, so he has Soul Adept, Kanto, and a skill that doesn't matter at base. I mean, Grass Runner matters on a couple of maps. It is better for him as a green unit than it is as a blue unit, I would say. But Grass Runner matters on a couple of maps. He gets Slayer at level 22, but he starts at level 12, so it's some ways away. His combat stats are fine, like 13 strength, 12 speed, 9 defense. Swords and bows, sucks that he doesn't have 1-2 range, but like he can have either. And then if you dismount, he gets bows dismounted. Which is cool because it means that indoors he's kind of a sniper. With Soul Adept and Kanto, well, not Kanto indoors, because when you're dismounted, Kanto only affects mounted units, which is tragic for, like, the dismounted units who would like to be able to use Kanto scrolls. I think he's pretty okay. Probably, like, here? Probably here. He's just sort of filler. I feel like every time I've deployed him, he's felt like he's filler. Kind of along the same lines as Kreis. Kreis might actually move down. No, I think Kreis is fine where he's at. I think Bartz, if you train him, is a better unit than Kreis, but I think Bartz is probably not getting trained. Yeah, Lionheart's basically just filler. In a similar vein, Zachariah is kind of just filler. He's a general, so 4 movement, sword locked, but incredibly good combat stats. 17 strength, 50 HP, 18 defense, and honestly 11 speed. Like, that's 1 less than Lionheart. 11 speed is very respectable. He's not a slow armor knight. He's just low movement. 4 movement is what holds him back. I think he's probably in the bare minimum, right? Like, his combat stats are very good, but he shows up quite late in the game. He's stuck at the 4 move. He's probably better than... Well, Norton can get out of low move hell. I think he's probably worse than Lionel. If we're penalizing Lionel for no late Naren, I think actually this probably makes more sense. Yeah, I like this. I like this as a place for him. I use him more often than I do Norton, which is why it feels weird that he's lower. But I think that I just don't like training Norton. The 6 move payoff is definitely something. Like, him just coming for free is valuable, though. Like, the fact you don't have to train him, I think, is valuable. Maybe it makes him better than Atrum, too. Atrum's ass. Atrum is so ass. He really does just do the bare minimum, though. Like, I'm not putting him in pretty okay. He is just... Maybe Mariuge moves up. Bare minimum feels like a very wide swath right now. No, I think this is fine. Actually. Bud is the next thief that you gain access to, and she is weird. So she sort of does the thief stuff as Junie, right? Lock, touch, steal, all that fun stuff. But she's sort of like a training project. Like, 1 strength with 15% strength growth doesn't seem like a straining project. But if you get her to level 40, she has Astra, which is a really weird skill to give to a unit who probably shouldn't be doing combat. She also, she gets Paragon at 10, so you can reasonably get Astra. She starts with Forester as well, which is relevant in her join map and never afterwards. Are there any forest maps after that? Not on Holmes route, which is where she wants to go for the desert item. Yeah, it's basically like, I don't know, it's weird. They encourage you to, like, train this unit to get Astra, but, like, she's not good when trained, combat-wise. I guess that makes her a meme, right? Like, that makes her a meme. Like, Hirish. These guys actively hurt you to pick, but, like, she's a meme. Oh, no, she's above Luca. I got confused. Yeah, she's right here. I think that's a good place for her. Next up is Rochelle, a.k.a. Sunflame the Unit. He has 13 mastery, 11 magic, 6 defense, but it's actually 16 because his personal tome is Sunflame, a 1/3 range, 70 durability tome that raises his defense by 10. This is your bulky mage. Bulky mage boy. 1/3 range, too. Like, you couldn't have cut it down to 1/2 range? You were worried it wasn't strong enough? His only weapon type he can use before promotion is fire. So unlike the other mages, he doesn't get 2 before promotion. He only gets 1. But all he needs is sunlight, or sunflame. Like, it's so good. 15 might, 100 hit, 70 durability. You never run out. It makes him the fucking mage tank. It's so broken. Yeah, he also has Terra and Vantage at bases if he wasn't strong enough. And then he gets Slayer at 15 and Adept at 32, which he's never hitting. But this guy's busted. This guy is... I think he's a worse mage than Miriel. Mostly because... Actually, is he better? Like, yes, she can do, like, 7 casts of Aura Rain. But he can fucking tank. She has to avoid tank. He can fucking tank. And hit on res. I guess her earlier availability makes her better. He's so good, though. This is... Like, it's crazy that he has 1 personal weapon. And she has 2. And both of hers are busted. And his is so good that I'm considering him being better than her on the strength of that personal weapon alone. But even if he were better than her, he wouldn't be the best mage in the game. Because that's Sierra. It's been a while since we've had a unit that I put in nearly perfect. But Sierra fits the bill. Is she better than Shigen? Probably. That's weird, right? 3-move unit being better than Shigen? Well, she has rewarp. She's a witch. She has, like, rewarp, the SOV rewarp, right? So not like the Fates one where you have to be next to someone. It's the SOV one. You just teleport across the map and kill people. And she's remarkably good at doing that as a, fucking, like, boss killer, right? You can just set up, kill bosses. She hits on resistance, good enough. What's really good for her, however, is you can get Vantage on her through a tutor house, and if you do that, she can use Sylphid Vantage, teleported to a group of enemies, Vantage them, hit them before they can attack her, and then they don't counter anymore because Sylphid stops their counters. And she just wrecks entire maps. So she's good if you're just trying to kill boss, because you teleport in and have her either kill the boss or deal chip to help out with your other boss killer. And she's good if you're trying to route the map, because you have her teleport in and either kill or damage a bunch of people with Sylphid. She's nuts. She's absolutely nuts. She can also use Dark Tomes. She's the only person in the game who can use Dark Tomes. This is mostly relevant if you happen to steal any of the Dark Tomes from, like, enemies. But she does join with a Nosferatu Tome in her inventory, which is nice. The trade-off is she's the only mage who will never get access to Light Tomes, but that doesn't fucking matter. Because most of the Light Tomes you just have on Muriel and Rochelle anyway. I mean, good Light Tomes are PRFs. Like, the other Light Tomes don't matter. Are there any other Light Tomes? I think there are. They wouldn't be a type if there weren't any that weren't PRFs. They would just be PRFs, right? I mean, Kaga made this game, so maybe I'm wrong. Either way, like, Dark Magic, good. She can use Nosferatu. She can use the stolen, like, AoE Dark Magics, I guess. But the bigger thing is Warp. Like, Warp is very, very good. Warp is very, very good. We'll get to you. But we gotta talk about another Sapphire first. This is Latena. So... You have to jump through a bunch of hoops to get Latena. Going through, like, various map events. You have to give her several items at several points. The Elixir and the Miracle Charm, both of which are very valuable items. You then have to have Kreis, who is a unit that I don't like a lot. Kill a very hard optional boss in a desert map. It's a scary wyvern. He has to land the finishing blow, which is hard for him to do. All of this gets you Latena instead of Rebecca. Latena is a better version of Rebecca on paper, but not even necessarily strictly, right? So Latena and Rebecca both have access to Summon and Paragon. However, Latena starts level 3 with Paragon and gets Summon at level 8. And she has a hidden movement star, or not movement star, leadership star. So she gives plus 10 hit and avoid to every player unit while deployed. Versus Rebecca, who has Summon at base and gets Paragon when she hits level 8. getting Paragon late, or she gets Paragon at level 16, and then she gets Charisma at 38. Getting Paragon at, like, late obviously sucks a little bit, but staffers don't actually care about power leveling. The only stat that matters for staffers is their mastery, and both Latenna and Rebecca have 10 mastery, so they can use all the staffs they can use the same number of staffs. They use staffs they care about. You can't use, like, I think Hamern might be too high for that. Is Hamern 9 mastery, or is it higher than that? Let me check. Hamern's mastery is 14, so they can't use Hamern, which sucks. But, like, other than that, they can use everything they care about. So their stats don't matter, and therefore Paragon doesn't matter. Paragon just gets, Paragon on Latenna just gets her to summon sooner. So she ends up being, like, worse in terms of skills. What makes her better is that she has access to the Silence Staff, which is global. It'll hit all the mages, right? So that's good. But then she leaves partway through. So you get her in chapter 25, right? However, at the start of the third split, which, bear in mind, so Runan split 2, you do a couple of chapters, 25, then 26, and then after 26, that's the end of Runan's portion on split 2. So Latenna's available basically after you've beaten 25, because you have to kill an optional boss at the end of 25 to get her. She's available for one map, and then she leaves forever, unless you, fucking chose Ezekiel to keep her. That's awful, right? Like, she's definitely better than him, but she does require you to use him if you want to keep her. And so we have to penalize her for Naren and Lee. And I guess, like, Lionel and Luca, maybe she's like... Well, the other thing is that, like, she's not even giving you everything in her package, because if you don't get her, which you pay for her, by the way, because you pay with an elixir and a miracle charm. If you don't get her, you get Rebecca, who's just, like, a pretty okay staff bot, right? She can use summon staffs, is the big thing about Rebecca. And, like, Catri's gone, so Rebecca's kind of your only summon staff user. But Latenna's like, what if you did a bunch of stuff to get a slightly better version of Rebecca? Because Silence is good, but then you fucking lose her unless you got Ezekiel. Like, it's so bad. She's so bad. I think she goes here. Like, despite Silence being global, and that, like, it is a very, very fucking powerful thing if you get it. The Silence Staff. But I don't think I care enough about the Silence Staff to grab Ezekiel, right? And if you don't grab Ezekiel, then, like, what are you doing with Latenna instead of Rebecca? You have Silence for one map, and it's not even mapped with that many mages. Like, it's got some meteor mages, I guess. It's so bad, so bad. Narcus is not bad. He's a bad guy. He's a sneaky, shifty little guy. But he has, so he's, like, got the Zane thing, where he can imitate units adjacent to him. He can do it to enemies, too. He doesn't copy their stats. Instead, he reclasses, and so he gets, like, their class bonuses by reclassing. And any class skills that they have, he'll get those as well. Warp is a class skill in this game. So Narcus is pretty fucking good. I think that Great Short Term is the place for him, because he doesn't have a magic stack, because he's not a magical unit. So, like, he really relies on Tome Might. But he can rewarp to, like, block forts. He can rewarp to, like, help Sierra with boss kills and stuff. He's not around very long. I think here is probably where I have him. Like, above Staff Bot out of 10. It's very good to be able to rewarp. It is very strong to be able to rewarp. The problem is he sort of runs into the situation of, like, rewarping and then not doing much of impact. Like, he's fort blocking, he's helping kill, as opposed to her getting kills. He doesn't have the mastery for Sylphid, even with the, like, transforming into her. Rewarp's very good, though. Like, he can be, like, chip number 2 to help kill boss. I still think, maybe here. Maybe he's, no. He's better than Staffbot out of 10, I think. He's better than Staffbot out of 10. Next up is Lena, and Lena is kind of an est, question mark. She doesn't have particularly good growths, 10% strength, 55% speed, that's good, but 10% strength on a 4 base is not great, even with Paragon. 60% luck, who cares? 40% magic, I guess she can use Levin Swords, if she gets her 2 mastery up to 8 on a 35% proc rate. She has 10% move growth. That's sort of the big meme payoff. 10% is a fucking absurd number. Both because it's a very high movement growth, 1 out of 10 times you'll level move, but also a very low strength growth. 1 out of 10 times you'll level strength. And she has a base strength of 4. She sort of runs into this problem where she's like, I'm going to zoom very, very far across the map, and then I'm going to get myself killed without contributing at all whatsoever. I think she's probably here. I think she's so bad. She's so bad. The 40% magic is like really tempting to be like, oh, you can do some Levin Sword stuff, right? Like her magic growth. But like her mastery growth is worse than her magic growth. So when is she going to get Levin Sword? Like she has Paragon at base. She'll get Kanto at 9. She's Vantage at 18, Adept at 23. But like 35% mastery growth with 2 mastery at base. 2 mastery? I've been shitting on Arcus for having 3 mastery in chapter 1. And this is 2 mastery in chapter fucking 26. God damn, no. No. Bad. If you want to zoom all the way across the map, however, just use the fucking Warp Staff. Like, Warp Staff out of 10. I think that, no, she's better than, I was going to say she's on the bottom because she comes really late, but she has 2 busted personals. She has Warp, which is her personal, and it is infinite range Warp, so you can just send someone across the map, and there's a lot of kill boss maps in the end game. And she has Banish, which is global, and it will delete monsters equivalent to the number of her magic. So the number of monsters it kills is her magic stat. That's cracked. Both of those alone are very, very strong, and she has both of them. Is she better than Sierra? Probably. Is she better than Late Naren? I don't think so. But I could see the argument. The only thing holding her back is she joins near the end of Split 2, which is incredibly tragic, but she's still just like, she's everything you want out of a unit, and she is a key part of the Yoda skips that you do in all of Holmes' route, because Yoda Fire Emblem, Yoda Star Wars, Yoda Tiering Saga, Yoda is a amazing swordmaster, best boss killer in the game. This is the unit I alluded to with Zeeg, saying that like he can kill him anyway. Yoda has absurd bases. Yoda has 16 strength, 22 skill, 21 speed, 8 defense, so he's not very bulky, 6 magic, especially not against mages, 13 luck, 18 mastery, lethality, Astra, Draco, Frontiersman, Slayer. This guy is killing anything he sees a round of combat against. It is absurd. He will crit, he will murder, he will lethality, which isn't actually that big of a deal, but he'll Astra. He's the best killer, of all. He will kill all the killers. He's the best boss killer. He does definitely rely on getting warped over there to boss kill, but he's still a good delete button, like, if you're not warp skipping, right? He's a lot worse. Well, he's not actually that much worse. Like, he's still deleting everything. His bulk is like, and he doesn't have a horse. But like, those are minor complaints, right? I think that the low availability and the fact that he kind of wants to get warped over places means that he's probably worse than early Naren. He's so good, though. Like, he is the reason you choose whether you want to play Holmes' route or Renan's route, right? And you send Renee and Yoda one way, and then you play the other one, because they're going to warp skip every map on their own. Speaking of skip, you probably skipped this guy. He is also a meme, and he's really bad. Like, I've heard people call him an est. He's the second ballistician in the game, and he joined significantly later than the first one, and, like, with worse stats, and he's supposed to have, like, really good growths or whatever, but he's trash. Like, really good growths. Let me tell you what counts as really good growths. Really good growths in fucking Tiering Saga, right? 35% strength, 55% HP, 30% skill, 40% speed, 40% defense, 5% magic, 40% luck, 40% mastery. It's not very good growths. He does have Paragon, but he starts at level 16, so like, it kind of just evens out. He is Adept, and he gets Pavise at 18. Yeah, he's not good. Don't use Hagar. Like, Hagar the Horrible, that was a comic book, and I think it perfectly describes that he's a meme. He's a meme. Verna is incredibly tragic, because she joins as the third Pegasus Knight with, like, decent stats. She has 15 magic, so she's going to be a good Levin Sword user, if nothing else. And then 12 strength, 13 mastery, 17 speed. She starts with a weapon in her inventory that has, like, a Brave effect. It's incredibly strong. She's got decent stats and she's a flyer. But unfortunately, she joins on literally the last outdoor map in the game. And as a result, every other thing after that, she has to be a dismounted, sword-only, penalties for dismounting person. Which is just, like, really, really tragic for her. It's just sad. It's just sad. Like, she could have been... She never would have been a great unit, because she joins so late, and she's, like, worse than the pegs you've trained, right? But she could have been okay. She's part of a triangle attack with Martel, Frau, and herself, Verna. But instead, she just ends up being, like, incredibly underwhelming. She's pretty okay in one map, and that's it. I think she is literally the bottom of the bare minimum. She's really sad and tragic for that reason. And then we end up with our two Gotohs. Well, I guess technically 3 if you want to include Alfred in that bunch. Tia and Sentet, I'll talk about them together because they're kind of the same thing. Sentet is probably the best at killing the final boss, but only Tia, Sentet, Holmes, and Renan can damage the final boss. And in order to kill him, all 4 of them have to surround him in a square while the finishing blow is landed. They each have personal weapons that are able to do that. Tia and Sentet start out with them, but they also only join you partway through the final map. And then Holmes and Renan get these personal weapons a couple of maps prior to the final map. It's weird rating them, and I'm almost tempted to just make a Gotoh tier for the 3 of them, because they don't really do anything for the rest of the run. I think, like, how short-term is 1 chapter? I think short-term enough, right? Like, we can put the 2 of them in great short-term, because they are great. They kill the final boss. Like, he's better than her. I guess we can go Gotoh here. We can make our own. We can make our own tier. We can make a new Gotoh tier. So add row below, Gotoh tier. Because it's so weird. Like, other times rating Gotohs is, like, you know, already a little bit weird, because it's sort of how much do you value a unit who's really, really good for 1 map. But there's 3 Gotohs, and I think they go in this order, because these 2 are for killing the final boss, and then he is a soft lock for what if you don't have access to warp. Because all of your units, other than the Gotohs, end up in, like, these cages, right? They can only be opened from the outside. And so you either, like, warp lock touchers, or use Sierra with chest keys, or Narcus with chest keys to open the doors and get out. But if you don't, he shows up, and he has warp, and he has, like, you know, decent combat stats. There are some monsters to kill on the final map, and he can help out with that if you care about it. But it's mostly just he warps around opening doors for you, right? He kills people who drop door keys, and then he warps around and opens the doors for you. And that's all well and good. It is, again, like, super anti-soft lock. Yeah, other than that, like, I guess if I had to put them somewhere other than the Gotoh tier, I would find a place for them in great short term, because, like, 1 chapter is short term. But it feels weird to put them, like, above, you know, pretty okay tier, right? I think that most games, like, you can probably slot a Gotoh into a place on the tier list. But for this one, like, it's just such a weird situation, right? Because they're similar to, like, Sentet and Tia in particular are similar to the Laguz Royals in that they purely exist for fighting a final boss. And, like, that would put them in F tier. Like, the Laguz Royals just don't show up in time for that. But, like, they do show up in time, but it is literally just for the boss. Like, they can contribute on the map, I guess, a little bit. But the map kind of doesn't have anything going on but the final boss. Like, it is a glorified cutscene for a few turns. And then the boss shows up, and there's, like, a bunch of Biggles you gotta kill. But you have an AoE attack from Sentet to kill them. And, I don't know, it's weird. The final map is cool, but it doesn't feel like a real map. It feels like a cutscene. So they're kind of just in a playable cutscene, is where they exist. So that is my list. As a reminder, late Naren, late Lee, late Luca, late Ezekiel. Other than that, this is the list we got. If you have played Tearing Saga and you have opinions on this list, or these characters or whatnot, feel free to let me know in the comments. It's possible that you think people are wildly different than me, and that's part of the fun of a game like Tearing Saga, where the units are all really unique, and the traits about them are more than just, like, stat thresholds. Like, their stats definitely do matter sometimes, but I think that this is one of the SRPGs where your stats are least impactful. You know, obviously, having very, very bad stats can drag a unit down, but, like, sometimes units are, like, able to get out of very bad stats by having traits that, you know, are very, very favorable based on their skill combination or whatever. So yeah, let me know what you think, and I'd love to hear it in the comments. And while you're down there, you know, hit the subscribe button, all that fun stuff, fun call to action like the video, and yeah, I hope you have a wonderful day.